Good evening. This is a meeting of the Town of South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission, Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if you haven't already, please take your phone and silence it so we don't get interrupted by phone calls. So tonight we have a public hearing. I'll let the secretary read the notice first.
Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number one, application 25-05P, Majewski Animal Agriculture Text Amendment. This is a request to modify section 5.8.4.6 and section 7.12.2.1 to allow commercial animal agriculture activities by special exception for A20 zoned properties in the Route 5 North Overlay Zone. Number two, application 25-09P, Carvana TNC, request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for a temporary office trailer, which will be 60 feet by 12 feet, for additional employees. This is on property located at 13 John Fitch Boulevard in the GC zone. Number three, application 25-08P, Orchard Point Senior Residence Development, a request for special exception to 7.12 and site plan of development for site plan approval for the construction of a 50-unit senior residence development on property located at 186 Foster Street, RR zone. And fourth, application 24-46P, CTEC Solar LLC, request for special exception to 3.1.1A and site plan of development for a large solar energy system on 5.66 acres in size and property located at 379 Scantic Road, RR zone. This is continued from our February 11th meeting. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and or the planning department and online at www.southwindsor-ct.gov/planning. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Stephen Wagner, Chair, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. So just a reminder, during the public hearing, our alternates can participate fully. When we get to the regular meeting, we'll be seating one of you. So let's bring up application. Well, let me first explain how we do this. So first we'll let the applicant speak, present whatever they have to present. When they're done, we'll get comments from our town staff, typically either our Director of Planning, Michelle Leip, or our Assistant Planner, Justin Russo, or the Engineering Department. Then we'll open the floor to members of the public. We ask that you only speak at the podium, that way it's properly recorded, and sign in and introduce yourself when you do come up to speak. Once we've heard from the public, we'll then hear from members of the commission. They may have questions. So when you're speaking as a member of the public, we won't have a dialogue with you. You may ask questions or whatever, we won't answer them. But then when the commissioners speak, we'll get back to you if there are any questions that still need to be answered. So at that point, if we're lucky, we can close the public hearing, and later in the meeting, we would then act on the application. The other thing that sometimes happens is, frequently happens, is we'll continue the public hearing to another date. So we'll find that out with each one of these. So right now we have application 25-05P, Majewski Animal Agricultural Text Amendment. If the applicant would come forward.
turn on the light. There you go.
How are you guys today?
Good.
That's good. So I'm applying to make an amendment to the zoning, so that way. Can you
The
hear me
mics
now?
really like you to be close, like 6 inches away.
Sorry, guys.
So we know the mic is working.
So I'd like to make this amendment to the zoning.
If you could introduce yourself and sign in, please.
Oh, okay. My name is
I'll put
Aaron
the sign-up sheet up in just a sec.
Okay.
That doesn't work.
Okay. So my name is Aaron Majewski. I live at 2022 John Fitch Boulevard, South Windsor, Connecticut. And I'm applying to make this amendment to the zoning regulations in order to make the property eligible for commercial farming. My neighbor to the north, Gary, who's on the docket today, he also is commercial farming. I own 3.9 acres in the north end of South Windsor, and I feel like it should not be under the 822 guidelines, and that's why I'm asking to adjust this. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Anything else?
Nothing
All right.
else.
In that case, we'll hear from our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request for a text amendment to modify section 5.846 and 712.2.1 to allow for commercial animal agricultural activities by special exception on A20 zone properties in the Route 5 North Overlay Zone. So the Route 5 North Overlay Zone was originally created in about 2015 to allow for some commercial opportunities that may be compatible with existing residential uses along the Route 5 corridor, and this is specifically in the northern section of Route 5 where there's currently existing housing. The goal is to complement the rural flavor here while recognizing landowners' potential need for some commercial opportunities. We've had one approval many years ago, about 2016, for a facility that actually never was constructed. Beyond that, you haven't had any other activity under that particular overlay zone. So the uses that would be allowed were things like municipal facilities, daycare facilities, professional office, commercial, corporate business, personal service shops. We did put in riding academies, barns and stables, home occupations. One of the things about the riding academies is you would have to apply for a commercial animal agricultural permit to be able to do that. So we only have some RR property there, so we did create a little bit of a conflict by not including the commercial animal in this section, and that's what we're talking about tonight. So this text amendment would actually add commercial animal agriculture as a permitted use. Currently, that's only permitted in our RR zones, in our A40 zones, so along the Main Street area or some other RR properties. One of the things about a commercial animal agricultural property is it has to be 3 acres in size minimum. And then if you look in your zoning regulations, you're allowed to do, if you're doing a home animal agriculture permit, you have so many chickens and pigs and things like that based on a table. When you go to a commercial animal agricultural permit, you propose based on the land and what it can support, what your practices are, maybe a different thing than what the table would support you doing if it was just a home animal. So one is permitted at the staff level. The commercial animal agriculture permit comes into the commission. So if this were to go forward and a project were to be proposed, it would come in as a special exception site plan to this commission, and it would go through the normal process you have for site plans and special exceptions. And you look at different things like, the surrounding properties and the impacts and things like that. The Town Plan of Conservation Development has recommendations encouraging, supporting agricultural activities, and also revitalizing and redeveloping areas on Route 5. We did refer this to CROG as required, and we had to get findings of no apparent conflict with regional plans or policies or concerns of neighboring towns. If this application is approved, the planning department has no requested modifications. Thank you.
So Aaron, you can sit down. You might want to stay near the front, though.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, we'll entertain comments from the public. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this? Sir, in the back?
Good evening. My name's John Mallon. I live at 2010 John Fitch Boulevard. The family property has been in possession of my family since it was built in 1942. I am very familiar with Mr. Majewski, as he is my neighbor. My big concern, if he has the right to have any livestock on that property, he is going to overpopulate it as he has in the past. My concern is I have a water well, and the off-flow from his animal waste could contaminate such. That's my biggest concern. He can raise 5 chickens, that's great. He wants to raise eggs. He can grow whatever he wants on his 3 acres. However, I don't need a 350-pound sow walking towards Route 5, which has happened in the past. That would ruin somebody moving on 5 because, let's be honest, people do not travel the speed limit on Route 5. It's average 60 miles an hour past my house. And a 350-pound sow is going to kill someone in a Honda Civic. This is doing 50 miles an hour, or on a motorcycle, which we get in the summertime quite often. And that's all I need to say.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for hearing me.
If we have questions for you, we'll ask them in a little later.
Absolutely.
Anyone else from the public? Sir, in back.
Will we be using the 3-minute timer for this? I think we forgot to.
I think right now we don't need it.
Okay.
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Bob Carney. Live at 2042 John Fitch Boulevard. Been a resident there for 28 years. Aaron Majewski is my neighbor. He's been living there roughly about 7 years. The concerns that I have, he's had the animals there before. His land is elevated from mine. He had pigs directly behind my property, roughly 40, 50 feet from the property line. Everything flows downward. The back of my property, while the pigs were there, was always very damp, very wet. The odor was very bad. I did talk to him many times about it. The pigs were in my property. Whether you know it or not, pigs aren't thin. They're built even bigger than I am. And they rut, and their paw prints are in the ground. The first time that happened, Aaron was nice enough to come over and repair them. The next 2 times he was not. I have photos of all that damage that I repaired. It's no problem. In the past, pigs have been on my property, ducks, the chickens, the guinea hens, and the goats. Multitudes. I have told the young man he can have all the animals he would like. It doesn't bother me. But confine them properly and put them in the right area of the property. The town has in your records that if you're having pigs I believe it says they have to be within 125 feet away from the property line. But the state statutes for keeping pigs on a property is 300 feet from a residence. And I believe that would oversee the towns. I'd like you people to maybe look into that and check that out. You know, like I said, he can have all he wants, but I worry about my well, like Mr. Mallon is, and I worry for his well because he has two beautiful young boys, and he should be concerned about that also. As for having over 3 acres of land to have these animals, I'm sure there has to be a certain number. It's gonna have to be regulated, and I don't know if that land topographically, if you went and you looked at it, I know there have been a couple people out there in the past from the town that were there to look at it, and you can see the pig pens are still there, and there's still an odor when it gets wet. Like the last few days, there's been an odor in my property. And I don't know the lay of the land if it's suitable for large animals, chickens, ducks, possibly if they're confined properly. But I also have a photo of a dead chicken that was in my yard. So, you know, and he come and he removed it and did the right thing, but, you know, there's coyotes, there's fox, there's plenty along the Scantic River coming right up to the back of the properties there. And all that's a concern. And, you know, being a taxpayer, I worry about the value of my property being next to this situation. And another situation is he's going through an unfortunate situation personally right now, and he's a 50% owner of the property. And it's in a civil court right now, litigation on the other 50%. So he's not a sole proprietor of that property. So I would recommend, I'd like to see this young man have animals, but if it's gonna be regulated, A, and B, until everything gets situated with the property and everything, I think this whole matter should be tabled and should really be investigated and looked at, the lay of the land and everything else, but we really should table it until there is a actual 100% owner of the property deeded. That's all I got to say. Thank you. God bless America.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? All right, hearing and seeing none.
I'll just note that I gave the commission copies of
Oh,
the entirety of section 7.12.
yes.
This amendment applies to the second part, so.
Yeah, thank you. That's right. The original documentation just covered the section that was involved, but some of the definitions are actually in the first part of that section, so that's why we passed that out as well. But let's go on. Do we have any, let's see, let's start with Commissioner Quarashi. You have any comments or questions?
I don't have any comments at this point.
Commissioner Cavagnaro?
Thank you. I do have a few questions that were, I guess, just popped into my head through the public hearing. I would like to ask. So if, Mr. Majewski, if you could step up to the podium, I do have a question or two I'd like to ask. So there wasn't much submitted for this application, so this is just me trying to re-clarify it, put it on the record for the commission here. What kind of security fencing do you have currently on your property right now?
So currently on my property, I have 6-foot-high chain link fences. The heavy gauge, I think it's 12, it's probably like 10 gauge wire, maybe 8 gauge wire. There was a couple trees that fell down. There had been a couple times that I left the gate open where Bob was talking about the sows getting into his yard. And for the record, every time that my sows went into his yard, mistakenly, I went over there, I seeded it, I took care of everything. Also, I just want to point out that I've done research as far as drainage goes and contamination and, you know, on giant scale hog farms out west, and they've done numerous studies. There's never been any contamination. Actually, on the property, it does drain this way on a hill, but Mr. Carney's property has always been a wetlands, and that's always been the bottom of the hill. Since I've been living at the house, I've made a berm that diffuses or diverts all the water to a retention pond in the front of my property up by Route 5. I've always put wood chips in there. You know, I've always been very kind to my neighbors. I've always helped them with everything. You know, they ever asked me of anything, I was right there for them. What's your next question?
Yeah, thank you for that. Definitely clears up either some confusion or if there was miscommunication on that. I guess my next question now is, I guess the timeline of that. Did all these events happen a long time ago and haven't happened since, or are they recent? I'm just curious how the time of events occur here.
So I applied for my farm permit back in 2018. I've lived on the property. This is going to be the 9th year, I believe, yeah. No, 8th year. This fall will be the 8th year. So it started with chickens and raising food for myself, and, you know, I've raised food for my kids and for my ex. She always enjoyed all the fresh meat and all that. I am currently going through a separation. I don't think that that information or my personal business is anyone else's business, especially my neighbors, who continuously call the cops on me for shooting in my shooting range, where I have a proper backstop. They call a lot. They call the town on me. And yes, like I said, every time there's been an issue, I addressed it, I talked to them, I handled it, everything was okay with them.
Okay, thank you. I apologize that information was brought up at this hearing. I was not aware of that. I guess my final question, and again, it seems like there is miscommunication, and I hope we get the facts of this application of whether or not what is true, what is false. Of course, just going forward, I'm curious if there's any new measures you may take to make sure the animals stay on your plot of land, making sure safety is a concern, because obviously you mentioned it with the 6-foot chain fence. You said you've left the gate open before. I'm not sure if you have any, I don't want to say new ideas to keep them in there, but just to make sure that you are keeping yourself accountable to making sure that those mistakes don't happen again. Because like they said, it could kill someone. It could, driving down Route 5, it could hurt someone.
So, as of last year, this time last year, my plan was to install a fence. And I had spoken to Mr. Carney about that, and we discussed it, and he was on board with it, with doing a 4-foot berm and a 6-foot fence or an 8-foot fence or whatever it was. He was okay with that. You know, I was removed from my house for a year, living in my truck. My whole life got put on hold. So now that I'm back at my house, I would like to get everything in order to give my boys the best life I can. And I feel like with them growing up with the farm and having farm animals, it's a healthy experience for them and any of their friends that do come over. You know, I have friends that have come over in the past and their grandkids have come over and, you know, they get the eggs all together. They all do this, you know. It was always a positive thing.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm sorry to be asking some of those questions. I know it may not be easy. I will say, and this is no longer a question, feel free to sit down. This is just a statement I do have, of course. At this time, I would not feel comfortable closing the public hearing tonight and voting on it. I think there's more information to be discussed, whether or not it's either photos or information to be submitting as exhibits for the next public hearing. I think it would be unfair to the applicant and the residents to be voting on it tonight. So that's how I feel about it. And I'll pass off the microphone to Commissioner Bernstein.
Let me just mention that this is actually a zone change that would apply.
Text amendment.
Text amendment that would apply to all the properties. So even though there may be specific issues with a specific property, the question in front of us is, should we allow this change to all properties, anybody in the zone who wants to take advantage of the new text amendment? So the specific issue with a specific property is a little different than what we're actually trying to do. We'll move on to Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aaron, right? Could you stand up again? Yes, sir. So I'm a city boy. Can you explain to me in terms I'll understand what commercial animal agriculture activities specifically means?
That allows my animal units to be different. So
Could you
say it again?
speak next to the mic, please?
I said that allows the animal units. So the way that the town does their stuff is animals are measured in units. So if you have X amount of acres, you can have 10 ducks or, 5 turkeys, 1 pig, or 5 pigs, and, it's measured in units, so to say.
Let me just interrupt you for a second, because that's defined in the paper we
Okay.
just handed out, and it's on this, it's this table in the page we just handed out, so, what a unit is.
Got it.
Okay, go ahead.
This is helpful. So the other thing I'm confused about is this notion of a fence. When Commissioner Cavagnari asked you about it, you described a chain link fence, and then you said something to the effect that you were going to put in a fence and you discussed it or had some communication with your neighbors. I guess my question is, listening to your neighbor's testimony, if there is a proper fence, then it seems to me that they wouldn't have any issues with animals getting out onto their property. So I can only assume that what you have there now is not adequate. Am I making a correct assumption?
No, sir.
Okay.
So,
Straighten me out.
Let me enlighten you. So I have individual pens set up on the property, which I've marked with the zoning.
Again, could you get closer to the mic? Yeah.
Sorry about that. I said I have individual pens set up on the property, which I marked with zoning with my farm permit when I was at my house. There was some trees that fell down, and I had my property line surveyed so that way I could install these fences, So I have individual pens. I built a new pen to move all of my animals to, which is a reinforced elk fence that's 8 feet tall and 2 feet in the ground with, 12-inch trees for posts. So there's no getting out of that fence. And at the time, I was in the process of moving everything over there. Unfortunately, my life changed drastically. So the farm went, I had to get rid of everything, so to say.
Okay.
And my plan was to install a barrier fence on the property line, like I said, like I discussed with Mr. Carney about doing last year. And he was in agreement with it, and he thought that that was a good idea as well.
All right, thank you. My only other question, Michelle, so the modification that's in our packet, there's not a lot of changes here. This represents what would be needed for this text amendment to occur?
So again, if you were to approve it and say, yes, we're willing to allow commercial animal agriculture, his next step would be to hire a surveyor, map the property, come in with a site plan, showing the fencing, coming in with the animals, showing how the animals are being kept, and all the elements of a site plan that would go through, public hearing process. Neighbors would be able to weigh in on whether or not they think it's adequate. That would be the next step. Again, we've been dealing with Mr. Majewski for several years in the animal agricultural permit world. When he came in to talk to me about this a couple years ago, if you remember, he wanted to sell some meat products off the site. That was, one of his things he wanted to be able to do is maybe, raise animals and then he'd be able to sell the meats. Again, wouldn't be allowed under a home animal permit. That's some of the reasons why this kind of permit request or change was being requested.
All right, thank you, that's all.
Commissioner Foley?
First of all, I'd like to, with Alan, I'd like to keep this open just so we can get some more information as far as, I'd like to visit the site just as, if you're okay with that, Aaron, as far as trying to just see the topography and adjacent to the neighbors. As far as, non-domesticated animals, I've personally hit 2 deer with my pickup truck. It's, if a cow gets loose, it's sad, but it happens. We're looking at out in Kent, Connecticut right now. There's one that's still on the loose. But if you have proper fencing in place, our plan of conservation development is to salvage what's left in agriculture in this town. And I'm for it, but with the proper protections. And I'd like to, livestock myself. As far as the wells go, I'm sure actually, Mr. Mallon, can you come up for a second? Absolutely. So do you have a water purification system for your well system?
I do not.
You do not, so you're straight out, how deep is your well?
I am uncertain. It was drilled before I was born. It's still the original well.
Do you know the distance from your property to his property?
It's approximately 50 yards
So 150.
from my wellhead to his property line, but I don't know the topography underground of the water flow.
Just explain to me, I know exactly where the farm is. Are you north?
I'm the southbound house. I'm 2010. John Fitch. It's a white colonial, black shutters. American flag with a Swedish banner under it right now.
Okay. All right. That's all I have right now.
Okay. Commissioner Dexter?
So, from what I understand, what we're talking about tonight is adding the A20 zone to the animal agricultural regs that we already have in place. So any A20 zone throughout the whole town, or is it just in the overlay zone?
It's just in the Route 5 North overlay.
Just in the
Correct.
overlay zone, okay. And does that include more sites besides Mr. Majewski's?
You know, if you look at our mapping, most of those properties are zoned 820, whether they're all 3 acres or not, or whether you combine
right,
some
right.
properties to
Okay.
get to 3 acres, or, you know, the desire to do it.
So this could very well be just for this property?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, it's just a first step to, like, what we all know will happen next, as we come in and we have to meet all the requirements before anything like this happens. So I think it's pretty cut and dry myself, but that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Willett?
So how many, I have to go back and look at the zoning to see how many properties would be affected by this zone change? Do we have a guesstimate?
A handful. You know, I mean, if you look at your Route 5 North overlay zone, and maybe 20 or 30 properties it may cover in its entirety, but again, that you have to be 3 acres in size and be farming and those kinds of things to even want to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So it is just, you know, up in the Scannick Road, that, you know, that intersection up there where you have some existing farming going on, so it is a rural flavor up there.
Okay.
But I don't think it being prevalent. But again, you might, you know, if you got a riding stable or something like that on one of those properties, again, I think that would be something we are encouraging through our regulations.
Okay. I'll echo the sentiments of Commissioner Cavanero and Foley to just, I'd like to drive by the property, see it, put my eyes on it, and then.
And what I might suggest, if you're going to do that, by all means, but keep in mind, this is a text amendment, so in the relationship of what kind of language we might want to add to the text to maybe further protections, if that's what your thoughts are when you see something. I mean, we're not doing this site specific. We're looking at creating, you know, what we think is the best regulation to put in place if something like this would move forward.
Great. No further questions.
Commissioner McGancy?
My question's, with this, if we did make this text amendment, and you mentioned the idea of that when Aaron applied last time for the farming license, if it turned to commercial, so he could sell meat, so that could be, is that permitted under this change?
Again, when you apply for a special exception under that, you define, you being the applicant, what you're proposing.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be
So that
allowed
doesn't-
unless you approved it as part of the proposal.
So it just wouldn't be automatically? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm in agreement with I do recommend that we keep it open and allow, and if there's any other residents that had any feedback or anything, and I think that my biggest thing is what Mr. Bernstein said was thinking about the fencing and the idea that it is a very busy area where this is located. That's all I have.
I'm very in favor of farming, but I think we need to look into, so this all would require a site plan prior to being
Correct.
able to do it. So you can look at all the containment issues and all that, because that seems to be the major problem is containment and things getting out, which can be solved very easily. Now, is there any inspection that gets done from the Department of Agriculture or Public Health on these commercial farms, or is that anything that's required? You aware of that? Just to make sure it's up to standards and
So
animals or?
I am registered with the Connecticut Farm Bureau, and I was working on getting my tax exempt number and all that, you know, with having the farm and, you know, farming it and keeping that heritage going. I'm not sure if there's really too many regulations about it. I've looked into it, and, you know, this is my first time going into it, and obviously I'd abide by them, you know, and do the best I can, and, you know, do everything. That's why I'm here today, to do everything by the books, so I don't have any problems.
So as it comes in, if it were to come in as an application, things like how waste is being handled and things like that would have to come in as part of a narrative and a plan. We would work with our health department, and they would get whatever resources they need to help review that and make sure that, you know, we're satisfied with how it's being handled. And I think sometimes it depends on what exactly you're going to do, whether or not Department of Agriculture gets involved. You know, I know with some butchering and things like that, they do get involved. You know, it's a little bit of a moving thing when the health department's in charge versus the state, but we can certainly clarify any of those things as it moves forward in a process as to, you know, what kinds of state approvals may be necessary.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Let me first just have a couple comments on the text, the proposed text. Paragraph 5.8.4, subparagraph 6. It basically attaches section 712.2 to riding academies, barns, and stables, but do we need additional? I mean, it seems like we're not just doing riding academies, barns, and stables anymore.
Yeah, we should add another commercial activities.
Okay. The heading for paragraph 712.2, it says basically in excess of 3 acres per animal unit. I think it's the other way around, right? The 3 animal units per acre. Is that the correct title? In excess of 3 units per acre, as opposed to 3 acres per unit.
Well, I'm not really quite sure. I'd have to go back. I mean, this is a title we've carried for a long time. I don't know.
But I think
3 animal units, 3, I'm not sure what you're suggesting. Can you say
well,
it
I'm
again?
just wondering if the title is correct, because
I would just leave it in excess of 3 acres and just take off the animal units. I'm not quite sure that that's appropriately placed there.
I don't think, I mean, if you go down to right below at number 4, it talks about 3 animal units, but the title of the section is 3 acres. So I'm wondering if this isn't just upside down mathematically, the ratio. Are we talking about having?
Let me go back. Can I go back and look at it and let you know at the next meeting?
Okay.
I'll check the initial
Okay.
thing on it.
So that would, you know, in 4, we would be adding, if I'm interpreting this correctly, 3 animal units per acre would be carried forward from the title down to the text. Because you never put the regulation in the title, you always put it in the text, right? So when you get a chance, look at both of those.
So again, the intent is that when you have over 3 acres, that you can come in under this regulation and apply for more animals than you can get in the chart.
Okay.
That is what the intent was when we wrote this regulation.
Okay.
So,
Now, how many units per acre
again,
are?
we don't define it because we allow you to tell us what the best practice is for the animals you're bringing onto the site. I'd give you an example of one of the horse farms down on Main Street. They have, I don't know how many animals they have, but it's, you know, they have best practices for their animals and keeping them in the stalls and out in the paddocks and whatnot, and you don't control the number of horses that you've permitted there. So that's why it's a commercial activity, so it's a different thing than your home, you know, chickens that you're raising at home and for your own personal use.
Okay. So now, are we out of compliance now? Mr.
We've been
Majewski?
working with Mr. Majewski on compliance issues. I think we're in compliance now. I know Pam Oliva, and we've had some conversations with him over the last year.
Okay, so I mean, now, apparently he's got these animals there that we're trying to allow in the regulation.
No, sir.
What is it I don't understand?
This time last year, I was removed from my house and I had to sell all my animals. I currently have chickens. I killed, 8 roosters yesterday to eat them. So I'm well within my regulations. I'm allowed 128 chickens on my property as of right now without
so
the farm permit.
These past experiences are prior to your current setup?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's no other animals on the property. I have my dogs and a few chickens for meat birds and eggs. You know, I've raised my own food, so I'm eating healthy.
I'm just going down my list here, excuse me. I think we need to add something to the regulation about adequate fencing and barriers. I mean, I heard, and we got a fence that's actually buried down. It goes below the surface, because I understand pigs can dig quite a bit, for example.
They can dig and they can jump. They were, so I was putting, with the pigs getting out, just to.
So we need something in there that says that the barriers, for the property are appropriate for the type of livestock that's being allowed on a given site. This drainage issue, I'm having trouble understanding the drainage issue. Do we have information about the whole area that would tell us whether there are issues that need to be addressed?
Again, that would happen at site plan review. I don't have any of that at this time because it's not a subject of any review. So, again, that would be him having to get topography and having to identify if he has regulated wetlands, having to identify, how waste is being handled. That's all part of what would be reviewed coming in as the site plan.
Could we, again, add a little bit of text to make sure that drainage of animal waste is properly controlled? All right, so I know I've talked to you, Michelle, but I think this needs to go on the record. When you talk about commercial agriculture, I mean, the far end of that is these gigantic factories that have, thousands or I don't know how many chickens or whatever. And I just want to be reassured that we have, within our regulations, a way of preventing that sort of thing. Maybe that applies to other places in town. So what is it that protects us from these factory farms that have a terrible impact on the neighborhood, that cause pollution, and there's all kinds of issues you can read about. I'm not aware of anything like that in our town, but are we defending ourselves against that sort of thing? And I know we talked about this in private, but I think we need to put that on the record.
I'm trying to think of a situation where something like that would be proposed. I mean, your industrial area, you allow manufacturing, processing of things. So under this particular regulation, I mean, this is a special exception use. It's meant to be in character with the residential properties out there. So I don't even think it would be a use that would be proposed in this particular area because it wouldn't, to me, meet the requirements of the overlay zone.
All right, thank you. That's all I had. Is there anyone from the public who has any other comments? Anyone? Yeah.
Can I ask one question? I know that one of the residents mentioned, I'm looking at the zoning here, and how do we control like the odor? If we have no animals for the last year, I think one of the neighbors mentioned that there was a bit of like they can smell it even now, so how do we is there a way that we'd even be able to?
Clean the waste up. Remove the waste from the property. Don't let it lie on the ground. Don't blow chicken waste around with a leaf blower. That's not removing it, that's spreading it out. Which, chicken manure is a great fertilizer, no argument, but it needs to be composted so it's not too acidic. My grandfather owned the property that I currently live on. He did have chickens, he had ducks, he had a pig pen in the 40s. He had 2 pigs, he had 2 lambs, maybe 8 chickens. I'm only on 1.25 acres, so it's a smaller property than Mr. Majewski's. But my grandfather was also a child of the Depression, survivor of the Depression. My grandmother could fit a whole chicken in a quart canning jar, bone in. Sorry for the visual, but they knew how to live and they knew how to feed 4 children. And it's not the volume of what you have, it's how you raise it and how it's treated during life and after death. They need to be treated well. They need to get medications. I don't believe Mr. Majewski understands that. He lost at least 2 litters of dogs 2 years ago to parvo. And his answer was to bleach his entire yard. That's not good animal husbandry. I don't want to see this get approved, not just on his basis, just it's not fitting for the area that we live in. Yes, I agree, keep South Windsor rural. I grew up hunting on Old Main Street. But we move on. We have to. And my biggest concern is the water quality at my home and my neighbors' homes. If there's runoff from animal feces, it can bring bad things. Why are eggs at $12 a dozen? Because of bird flu. If animals aren't tested, they can pass that on very easily.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I heard several of the commissioners want to continue the hearing.
Yeah, I want to say visit.
Okay. I would just make one other comment. I mean, farms by their nature create odors. And when you live next to a farm, you expect to have some odors. And I don't think we have any particular controls over that anywhere else, right? Is that true? I mean, if a farmer wants to raise...
I mean, there's a right to farm in the state of Connecticut,
Right.
so yeah. Odor becomes a public health kind of thing. So, I mean, the health department would be where odor complaints are filed, and they would handle it based on their protocols.
On the other hand, we're allowing a change in the level of farming in this particular residential district. So I think that's a consideration we all have to think about while we're, waiting for the next public hearing. So we've established a residential district. We've allowed for an overlay zone, which expands what people can do there, but it's still a residential district. So, but on the other hand, if you live on Main Street, I don't, but there's a lot of farms there. I assume that from time to time you can smell the manure. Hopefully it's not the sewer plant. But, some of that just comes with allowing farming in our community. So I don't know what to say about that, but sorry.
Before you close today's hearing, I wanted to just say a couple more things. So as far as my property, I do have a manure pile where I do stockpile and clean out my coop. I always added wood chips into my pile. Also, allowing this to go through just encourages us as the people to grow and raise our own food without all the hormones and chemicals that modern day farming and modern day laws are forcing us to take. That's what's killing everyone. That's why I've always raised my own food. So That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. So again, talking about continuing the hearing, before we do that, anyone else? Okay, get a motion?
So it'd be March 11th would be your next
Okay.
meeting date?
Move to continue the public hearing to March 11th, 2025.
All in favor? Aye. Aye, okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to Carvana, application 25-09P, Carvana.
Good evening. My name is Emily Garcia. I'm here on behalf of Carvana, requesting for approval for the temporary conditional permit for us to place that 60 by 12 office trailer on site at our 13 John Fitch Boulevard office space that we have. This trailer is going to support our title and registration team. Carvana has been operating in South Windsor for initially about 12 years. And this will help us. When we first came in 2017, we started about 12 employees. And over the years, we have grown to like 27 employees in that site. And we're now looking to add 10 additional team members. However, the current building doesn't have the capacity to add the growth accommodations. The trailer will serve as a short-term solution temporarily for the next 2 years. We are in works with the landlord to do a more permanent expansion plan with them to accommodate this growth that we're having at our site. Our title and registration team requires a secure like a secure office space, and we need to meet that, legal operation requirement. So the existing building cannot accommodate that, so the trailer will allow us to support the 10 new employees. Currently creating local jobs and straining our operational efficiency. We've been at this location and I'm thinking that we're going to allow us to continue providing excellent service to our customers. So the trailer will be using the existing water and power utilities. So that's going to reduce the construction and won't have any disruption. We are currently working with an architect firm, and that's going to ensure that the placement of the trailer does not interfere with the parking structure or any traffic flow in our site currently. The trailer is only for employees, so per ADA standards, modifications are not required. However, if there is that need later on that somebody, has some type of disability, we'll be able to add that at any time. And the trailer will be well maintained. It's in a very visual, section where it aligns with the existing building. We have no additional noise, traffic, or safety concerns that will be created just adding this office trailer to the site. There's not going to be any major construction it's going to be a low-pack solution. And again, the trailer is not going to be permanent. We're working with our landlord to, create that more permanent solution for this growth that we're having. And we just want to literally understand your approval, timeline for this, for us to be able to, accommodate this growth that we're having.
So, thank you. You can have a seat. We may have some more questions in a minute or two. Town Planner Leip.
Thank you. So this is request for a 2-year permit for the temporary office trailer on the Carvana site at 13 John Fitch Boulevard in general commercial zone. As indicated, this is a temporary situation for some extra employees that they'd like to bring on site. The plan submitted shows the trailer on the north side of the building. I will say, looking at past aerials to get ready for tonight, the site's really cleaned up. The site is kept very nice, and they've been a welcome addition to our town, particularly in that area there. So we talked with them about, the fact that the 2-year permit is a temporary thing, and thus they will be looking to possible permanent solutions towards the end of the 2-year duration if it's granted. Staff really has no concerns. Both building permit and town sanitarian would be required because it is a site that has septic, so it'll need a permit through the sanitarian. The TNC wording is that temporary and conditional permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after public hearing if, in the judgment of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served, and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and traffic and other hazards will not result from such use. There is plenty of parking on site, both outside of the fenced-in area as well as within inside the fenced area. So, again, staff doesn't have any recommended comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we'll have members of the public having any comments. Okay. Commissioners, Commissioner Kupchinas.
No comment.
Commissioner Baganski.
No comment.
Commissioner Willett.
No comment.
Commissioner Dexter.
I'm glad you're doing well. No comment.
Commissioner Foley.
No comment.
Commissioner Bernstein.
I'm going to break the string. I do have some questions. So if you're adding employees, business is good, right?
Absolutely.
You guys sell cars, right?
Well, it's not, we don't sell them there, it's just a hub where we bring in the vehicles to get them ready for delivery.
Okay, so the reason for the question is I'm wondering, with more employees, I might think that that might lead to a need for more parking, more inventory, like a trickle effect because business is good, because you're adding employees. Is that not because you don't do any of the selling on that?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. We don't do any selling. This
So
is-
the type of activities the employees would be involved in is bookkeeping, accounting?
It's just maintaining the vehicles, bringing them in, just kind of, making sure that the vehicles
So
are
there's no other business impact
No, not at all.
based on the need for more employees? Oh, I'm happy business is good, and I'm
Yes.
happy to hear that the site's cleaned up.
Yep.
I live near Route 5, so anything that improves Route 5, I'm all for. Thank you.
And of course.
Commissioner Cavanero.
Thank you. I also do have a question or two I would like to ask, and I apologize to keep breaking the ice there, but I recall 2 years ago when this came up as a 2-year temporary conditional, I asked the question about security on site, because at the time in early 2023, late 2022, there were car break-ins in South Windsor. It was a lot more common then than it is now. This is just more of a clarifying question, just as a follow-up from 2 years ago. Has there been any safety concerns related to car theft in the lot in the past 2 years?
Nothing has been reported. We have our team lead that just brought just because she's on site for any of these current questions, but nothing has been, that concern has we've maintained that, our site.
Perfect, that's great to hear. I also want to echo what Commissioner Bernstein said as well. I think he brought up a great point. I just want to get more clarified on the record as well. I don't want it to be too vague. Because the employees that you're bringing on aren't necessarily related to bringing out cars, I just want to confirm that because you're bringing on 10 new employees, that will not impact the input and the output for traffic. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
Thank you so much, and thanks for coming forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Kawashi.
I just have one quick question. Does the staff have recommendations on where to place the trailer, or do we not?
Actually, the plan that you have shows the location just north of the building.
It's in the middle?
So yes, we do. You'll see it right there. It's easy.
Oh, okay, I see it. Thank you.
I have no further questions. Anybody else have anything? So,
One-
okay.
I don't know if this was asked or commented on, but the hours of operation,
So our hours of operation, I think it's like 9 to 9, but it's staggered, so like different shifts.
9 to 9, 5 days a week, 7, it's 5, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Did we ask for comments from the public?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did ask for comments from the public, yes, okay. All right. Motion to close the hearing, anybody?
I make a motion, we close the public hearing?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. And we'll hopefully be able to act on this later tonight. So the next application is Orchard Point Senior Residence Development, application 2508P.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, well, I think I opened all of them. They should be. Well, yeah, so you can see what they all are. So the site plan is the one you wanted first, or?
I think this one is expected to be pretty lengthy in terms of public comments, so we'll ask that people limit their
Well, there are site plans, there are.
speaking, well, while you're working on that, we'll limit their speaking to 3 minutes, except for the applicant. The applicant will be able to, make whatever presentation they need.
ENS plan? So you can,
So Josh, I don't know if you picked up on that, but we're going to use the 3-minute limit. That allows us to give everybody a chance to speak. After everyone's had a chance to speak, within that 3-minute limit, if there's more that someone needs to say, we'll provide time for that then. So
All set?
please introduce yourself
Yes.
and sign in.
Thank you. For the record, my name's Dory Reiser. I'm with Kahan Kerensky Capicella. I'm representing the applicants, the Boyntons, tonight in connection with this application. I have Ken, John, and Kristen Boynton here for the representatives of the landowners and the applicants. We also have Tim Kuhn, who is our engineer on this project. This, as you know, is a special exception for a senior residence development at 186 Foster Street. The development, which I'm going to turn it over to Tim in a moment to talk to you about in detail, is anticipated to be a condominium development. There will be 50 homes for sale, not for rental, and they will be mostly single-family homes. There will be a few duplex buildings. They will all be to be senior residences, 55 and older. So that will be a provision controlling within the condominium documents. The size of the homes will vary based upon the buyer's needs and what they wish. We do offer a number of different floor plans that range anywhere between around 1,550 square feet up to about 2,200 square feet. There may be some additional floor plans that are offered, but whatever gets sold and gets built, we will ensure compliance with your regulations, which requires at least 30% of the units be 1,800 square feet or less, and not more than 30% of the units be over 2,200 square feet. There's an absolute cap of 2,400 square feet for all of the units. So we'll make sure that the homes all comply with those standard requirements in your regulations. In addition, in this development of 50 homes, 15% will be reserved for affordable homes, and that's affordable to 80% of the median income for residents. And so that's a total of 8 homes. Again, that will be a deed restriction that goes on for 40 years. That's another requirement of your regulations. That will all be built into our affordability plan as well as the condominium documents. So we did submit the affordability plan, which again is a regulation requirement to the town. I believe the town attorneys reviewed it, might have had some minor comments. We can get at that in a little bit. The development, as you can see on the screen here, has a private driveway, primary access just to the north of the house at 178, I believe, Foster. That will serve as the primary access. It ends in a cul-de-sac on the east end of the property. There is a secondary access as well, which will be discussed by the engineer when he comes up to talk about that. Again, I'm hitting on these all regulation requirements, and the reason I'm hitting on that is because if you recall, about 6 months ago or so, I think it was September of this past year, we were here looking for an amendment to the regulations having to do with your senior residence development. And when we were here and presented that and when you approved it, it requires certain items, minimum sizes, maximum sizes, secondary access, clubhouse, and amenities and things like that on site. So we're going to get into all of that detail, but I just wanted to remind you, that was all part of what we reviewed and what you reviewed and what was approved back, I think, September of 2024 for that regulation amendment. Since that time, we've spent a lot of time with our team preparing these plans, making sure they comply with the regulations, meeting with town staff to make sure that we answer any questions that the town engineer or the planning office has. We received unanimous approval from the Wetlands Commission at the beginning of the month. Last week, we were in front of Architecture and Design Review Committee, and we received their positive recommendation to come forward as well. So that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months or so, getting ready for this stage. Now we're here to present our full special exception and site plan application. And with that, I'm going to ask Tim to come up, and he's going to take you through the development. I might chime in a little bit to, again, hit on some of that regulatory compliance, but I'm going to let him take the lead for the moment.
Okay, so before you speak, Tim, I got in my possession a stack of these. Did everyone get one? Everyone got one? Okay. And when you're looking at documents, would you help us find the document you're talking about? So tell us which package it's in and what page or whatever.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Kuhn. I'm a professional engineer with J.R. Russo and Associates here tonight. We developed these site plans that you have in front of you. On the screen, currently we have an existing conditions plan, which I'll use for the majority of the presentation, and I'll try to point out on this plan items that I'm discussing. So, as Dory mentioned, the project is located...
So what drawing is that?
This is actually just an exhibit plan which was prepared specifically for this evening. It includes...
I believe it went out in your packets. It should have been a standalone, right? Okay.
Yeah.
This one here?
No, I don't believe it's in your packets. It's an overall exhibit. It compiles some information from different sheets in the plan set. If you prefer, I can just go to the plan set and work off of that.
I guess it bothers me that we have a document being presented that's not in our possession to review.
Okay.
Yeah, go to the plan set.
Let me go to the plan set. So this is the layout plan, which is, I believe, sheet 4 of the plan set. So the site is a 16.82 acre property on the on the east side of Foster Street, approximately 350 feet south of Orchard Hill Drive, which is located to the north. Where'd my mouse go? Orchard Hill Drive is up here to the north. The site is currently in agriculture and historically been in agriculture and row crop. There is an existing row of trees along the northern and eastern and a portion of the southern property line. There's an existing barn located in the southwest corner, which is actually accessed by a dirt road that comes off of Foster Street down here at the southwest corner as well. There was a small wetland identified at the southern property boundary, and this wetland extends off-site to the south. And the majority of the site slopes so that runoff is directed from the site to that wetland, and that's where it leaves the property. As Dory mentioned, we are proposing a 50-unit or 50-home senior residential development consisting of 44 single-family homes and 3 duplexes. It will include approximately 2,820 feet of new roadway, 24-foot wide paved roadway, which includes Jacqueline Lane, which will be the cul-de-sac drive, and then Emily Way, which is a little loop street off of Jacqueline. We will be providing sidewalk on one side of the street throughout the development. We are also providing a crosswalk with a push-button controlled signal and rectangular rapid flashing beacon at the site driveway to provide a future connection to the sidewalk that the town currently has planned to be constructed on the west side of Foster Street in the future. As you come into the site, we have a little pull-off with a bank of mailboxes, which will serve the community. And as Dory mentioned, there is an emergency access drive, which is the secondary means of ingress and egress, which will be a 12-foot wide paved emergency access way that will be gated so that it's not meant for regular access, strictly for emergencies, and obviously emergency services will have the ability to open that gate. The barn, located in the southwest corner, is going to be renovated to include a 1,000 square foot community room, which is one of the requirements of the regulation. It will also have an indoor pickleball court and some storage areas. At the northern end of the barn, we will construct a patio, and there will be other outdoor amenities, recreation on the south side, or I'm sorry, on the west side, including horseshoe pits, bocce court, and picnic tables. And we will provide a stone dust path to connect the two ends of the building as well. There's additional passive recreation space which is being proposed within the center of the cul-de-sac at the other end of the site, where we are proposing to construct a gazebo, just have a passive recreation space there. In total, we're proposing approximately 22,900 square feet of recreation space to comply with the 15,000 square foot requirement. So we exceed that. With parking, each home will have a 2-car garage and 2 additional spaces out in front of the garage. So there will be 4 spaces for each home. In addition, we're providing 11 parking spaces down next to the community center. We have 7 over here, an additional 4 over here. And we have 12 other parking spaces, just visitor parking scattered throughout the site. There's some banks of 3 of them. If you look at the site plan, there's 3 here, 3 here, 3 up by the cul-de-sac. So in total, we have 223 total parking spaces, which exceeds the requirement for the parking for this site. The site will be served by public sewer and water and on-site drainage system. The on-site drainage system will consist of a series of catch basins and manholes and piping to collect the roadway and the roof runoff and divert it to one of 2 infiltration basins, where the majority of the runoff will be recharged back into the ground. The basins will overflow whatever doesn't go back into the ground to the edge of the wetland at the southeast corner of this site. And I'm going to switch to the grading plan now, where you can see the 2 infiltration basins. This is basin 1 and basin 2. This is the next page. The infiltration basins have been designed in accordance with the DEEP Stormwater Manual to provide the required retention, groundwater recharge, and treatment and to ensure that there are no environmental or flooding impacts downstream. A stormwater report was submitted with our application, reviewed and approved by the town engineer, and that report demonstrates that the project will result in a decrease in both the peak rate of discharge from the site as well as the total runoff volume from the site. For lighting, I did give you that handout earlier this evening. We have been working with town staff on our lighting plan. Our initial plan, they requested some more lighting, so we have been working on that, and unfortunately, just today, we received from our lighting supplier a revised layout and photometric plan, which you have in front of you. I apologize for the size and the fact that you can't read the numbers. But we have presented this also to the assistant planner. I believe the applicant met with the assistant planner today to go over this revised lighting layout and photometric plan. It is my understanding that there are still some tweaks that are required. However, we believe these tweaks to be minor, and we're hoping that they can be handled as a condition of approval in the event that you vote on this application tonight. I'm going to go to the landscape plan now. It is this one. So you should also in your package have the landscape plan. We've worked with the town staff to develop this as well.
Give us a second to find it.
Okay.
Everyone find this thing?
So in our landscape plan, we are providing street trees along the street throughout the development. Up along Foster Street, we are providing a planted earthen berm with some trees and shrubs in that area as well. Along the frontage, we are proposing groups of evergreen trees along the northern property line to provide some additional screening along that boundary. Each of the buildings will have some foundation plans, which are detailed on the second page of the planting plans. In addition, we will have a specific slope seed mix for our steep slopes, as well as a specific seed mix in and around the stormwater basins. And finally, we are also providing some wetland mitigation plantings within the wetland, which is the detail down at the bottom of the page. This was prepared by our wetland scientists and was part of our presentation to the Wetland Commission, which was approved.
Tim, before you leave the landscaping plan, I don't know if it's shown on this plan or if it's on another sheet, but there should be a notation somewhere about the stone walls along the northerly boundary to remain intact. Is that on this sheet?
That's actually on the layout plan.
Oh, okay. Well, so there is an existing stone wall that's along a good portion of the northerly boundary, and I guess it's on the existing layout plan that is shown to remain in place as well, and we will build something into the condominium documents to make sure that it doesn't get removed from site during construction. Thank you.
Moving on, the site is planned to be conducted and constructed in 3 phases. The initial phase will include, obviously, the installation of all our temporary sediment and erosion controls. Actually, I'll go back to the grading plan because that's where I believe that's where it shows the erosion controls. During that first step, all the site clearing will be completed. In addition, both of the stormwater basins will be constructed because those basins will be used as sediment traps during construction. We will strip all the topsoil and perform all the mass cuts and fills so that we get all of our earthwork, all of our big earthwork done at once. Then we're going to reestablish the topsoil and reseed everything to stabilize the site during that first phase. Then the phase 1B, that would be phase 1A. Phase 1B, which there may be a little overlap, while they're spreading topsoil. Phase 1B will include the construction of the roadway, the utilities, and the first 20 homes up to the Phase 2 line, which is right after the loop. So everything to the west, this is part of the Phase 1B construction, and then obviously Phase 2 would be the construction of the remainder of the roadway, utilities, and houses to the east, in addition to the finished pavement course when the whole site is complete. We did have a traffic impact assessment completed by F.A. Hesketh and Associates. This was submitted with our application. They installed a counter to measure the traffic on Foster Street. In addition, they conducted manual turning movement counts at the intersection of Foster Street with Route 30 and Slater Street to the south. And then they applied the traffic anticipated to be generated from the site to the surrounding roadway in order to evaluate the potential impacts. And their report concludes that the traffic volumes associated with the proposed development can readily be accommodated by the existing roadway network. They also determined that the available site distance at the proposed site driveway meets the minimum standards. Finally, we have building elevations which were presented, and I'll just run through these. We provided 3 separate elevations.
What drawing is that?
These are the architectural plans and elevations, which I believe were separate. They weren't bound in the
Does it have a page number in our?
I believe this is, what, A100 is what I'm looking at right now.
It's separate? This is the barn.
No?
Okay. Is this a stack that I have to share? No. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys have one of these somewhere? Oh, we pass it down.
one there or two?
That's just one. Okay.
So it will be, it's up on the screen. I just to point out that we did submit, architectural floor plans and elevations for the different units with the different floor areas that will be proposed. And these were all submitted and reviewed by the Design Review Committee last week. And as Dory mentioned, we did receive a positive recommendation from them. And those are the 3 building units that are being proposed. And then we also have, this is a rendering of the renovated barn, which will include the 1,000-square-foot community center at the one end, indoor pickleball court, and then storage at the western end. And again, these items, as well as the landscape plan, were all reviewed by Design Review Committee, and we received positive recommendation for that. I believe that covers all of the proposed site plans, so I'll turn it back over to Dory.
I don't have too much to add. I just wanted to know, when we reviewed with Architecture and Design Review Committee, we went through in detail the color schemes, the different floor plans, the different house footprints. They're all, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken and John, but I believe we had said that they're all going to look kind of like a ranch from the outside, and really the different sizes would be whether or not there's finished area upstairs on the inside, correct? So they're going to look pretty similar, and I think there's 4 different exterior colors that will be repeated throughout the community, but not like 1, 2, 3, 4. It was a nice layout, and we reviewed that and how it would be worked through the community with design review. We also mentioned that each of these units does have a garage, and there will be an EV charging outlet in the garage. So, and each of it's a two-car garage for each unit, and then they'll have room to park also 2 cars in their driveways as well. I think that was a gist of it. I don't know if you want us to go into a lot more detail that we went into a design review the other day, or if you're comfortable just with their recommendation and having seen the renderings.
I think we're happy with what we have. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
If
Well, then
anyone
if
has
there's
any
specific
questions,
questions, that's our initial presentation, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions about any of the specific reports or plans that you've seen.
Okay, please have a seat. We'll probably have questions for you in a bit. Now for our town planner, or Justin Rousseau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a request for a special exception to section 7.17 and site plan of development for approval of a 50-unit senior residence development on property located at 186 Foster Street in the rural residential zone. The existing property is currently an agricultural field. Double R zone properties lie south of the subject property, and double A30 zone properties adjoin on the northern property line. The town-owned 215 Avery Street open space adjoins the subject property on the eastern property line. All proposed units are single-family. 6 units are attached to make 3 duplexes and are interspersed centrally. These units would vary in size according to the new formula in the approved SRD text amendment last year. That states that the maximum unit size shall be 2,400 square feet. The number of units exceeding 2,200 square feet shall not exceed 30%, and the minimum number of units, 1,800 square feet or less, shall be 30%, with which the applicant appears to comply. This application is subject to the special exception review criteria of section 8.4B, which includes that the proposal is consistent with the goals and objectives of the Plan of Conservation and Development. The application has met the requirements of the zoning regulations. The land is physically suited to the proposed use. Minimal, if any, adverse environmental impacts are created. No traffic or other hazards will be created. The impact on the capacity of the present and proposed utilities, street, drainage system, sidewalks, and other elements of the infrastructure will be minimal. There will be minimal or no adverse effects on the existing uses in the area. Surrounding property values will be conserved. The character of the neighborhood will be maintained or minimally disrupted. The general welfare of the community will be served. There is a balance between the neighborhood acceptance and community needs. Historic factors are adequately protected, or due consideration to preservation of historic factors has been demonstrated. The overall physical appearance of the proposed development is compatible with surrounding development and the Commission's goals for the neighborhood and corridor. The architectural design is aesthetically pleasing and blends well into the surrounding area. Noise created by on-site activities, including vehicle equipment noise. And finally, the Commission may impose additional conditions in accordance with the regulations in order to ensure that all applicable criteria enumerated above and or within a particular use category are satisfied. We also have criteria that the senior residence development should adhere to, such as the SRD proposal will help meet senior housing needs of South Windsor. The location of the SRD facility is within reasonable proximity to community facilities or amenities that serve the needs of the elderly residents, or is within reasonable proximity to indoor and outdoor activity centers, or is within close proximity to or contains permanent open space land. And finally, the SRD facility has been designed to meet the needs of handicapped residents or visitors. So going back a little bit more about the proposal and the property. So the proposed density is 3.4 units per net buildable acre, with a maximum of 4.17 units per net buildable acre allowed. Proposed impervious is 34%, where 60% is allowed. Required parking spaces is 2 minimum per unit, or 100 spaces. So the applicant has provided 223 spaces where, as noted, 2 spaces in each garage, 2 spaces in each driveway, and then 23 additional spaces provided throughout the development. So staff has requested that the applicant consider constructing sidewalks to connect to either the existing or future sidewalks in the neighborhood. As shown, they are proposing a crosswalk and a rectangular rapid flashing beacon across Foster Street to connect with future sidewalks, but this would introduce a mid-block crossing, which has been discouraged by planning and engineering. Per our regulations, senior residence developments containing more than 36 units will require a minimum 1,000 square feet on-site community room and at least 300 square feet per dwelling unit of recreational areas, providing sufficient passive and active recreational opportunities. As the applicant presented, they are showing areas that meet these requirements and exceed these requirements as well. The applicant submitted an affordability plan. It appears to be in conformance. It has been submitted to the town attorney for further review. A photometric plan demonstrating the distribution of the proposed lights throughout the development has been submitted. As noted, we have been discussing with the applicant. The plan that was submitted, staff feels that they actually have provided more lights than is necessary. So we would like to work with them closely to refine the plan and get something that is more appropriate to the area, provides the correct amount of light, not to impose any additional light that wouldn't be required for, not to disturb the neighborhood. Electrical vehicle charging equipment, as noted, has been or will be provided. They'll be in the form of outlets that'll be in each dwelling unit, garage, and that's per our regulation. The site itself is predominantly open. There are perimeter deciduous trees that will be cleared in part due to earthwork operations. Per our SRD regulations, large trees and stands of mature trees and shrubs are to remain undisturbed where practical and desirable, such as along property lines to maintain screening from adjoining residents. As the applicant presented, they have provided evergreen trees and shrubs along the property boundaries to provide additional screening. The applicant has also submitted fire truck maneuvering studies and a detail regarding emergency access drive construction. We did speak with the fire marshal and got his review on that. I'll read his comments into the record later after this report. A hold harmless agreement and permission to enter form will need to be provided to the town to allow the refuse and recycling vehicles to enter the site. We would be doing refuse and recycling pickup for this SRD. As noted, there are regulated wetlands on site. The Inland Wetlands Agency and Conservation Commission approved this application at their February 5th meeting with standard approval conditions, including the incorporation of comments regarding landscaping for the wetland restoration and enhancement plan into the final plans, and the collection of bonds in the amount of $40,000 for establishment and maintenance of erosion and sediment controls, $30,000 for the installation of stormwater structures, and $5,000 for installation and establishment of wetland plantings, which is to be held for 3 full growing seasons for monitoring, maintenance, and invasive species control. And finally, public water and sewer is available. WPCA will be required. So that would be the planning department report. I'd like to read into the record a note from ADRC, Architectural and Design Review Committee, and the fire marshal as well. So as Attorney Reiser noted, the applicant did attend the ADRC meeting. A favorable review was provided. No return will be necessary. However, they did note at that time the applicant did not have the lighting available. So they just noted that the photometric shall be submitted to and reviewed by town staff, which they have been. Upon discussion with the fire marshal, his request was that the emergency access shall be plowed and also shoveled to ensure that the truck outriggers can deploy. That would be, if the truck outriggers for whatever reason needed to deploy beyond the provided 12-foot wide pathway. And he did pose one question. He asked whether the reinforced base that was being provided was strong enough to support the outriggers. Engineering comments. Yeah.
Jeff Doolittle did provide engineering comments to the applicant February 11, 2025. We did receive revised plans which have been reviewed. Jeff is away on vacation tonight, but I told him I'd make comments for him. He did just want me to put on the record that originally when the plan did come in, he did have some drainage concerns, particularly related to the basins and what the storage water, amount of water being stored, whatnot. We've had at least 2 meetings with the applicant and the engineers and worked through some of those issues. And at this point, he will be reviewing the revised plans one last time, but it was satisfied with where the plans were. So we do have comments that just have not been signed off on yet, and we would, if it moves forward to approval, would recommend them as approval condition. Thank you.
So if this application is approved, the planning department has no additional comments. Thank you.
Although I do have one. No, I just wanted to say about the affordability plan. The town attorney and I spoke about it the other day. It does look in order. There is a question on how the town is going to administer these units once the developer is no longer in the picture, and that's something that he and I are talking about. So either if this were to move forward, we'd recommend that we work out the final details of the affordability plan. I will keep you abreast as we move forward, but the content of it is what's required, and from that perspective, just some minor modifications we'd be looking for.
All right, thank you. Now we'll take comments from the public.
Can I respond to a couple of those things, or should I hold?
Why don't we wait? Okay, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Chris Feiner. I live at 38 Orchard Hill Drive. I'm here on behalf of myself, my family, and some other residents of Orchard Hill who couldn't be here tonight. Also one resident of Foster Street who can be here tonight. I want to speak out against this. I believe this is sold to the rest of the residents of South Windsor as something honorable to do for the elderly community or 55-plus community.
Could you try to stay close to the microphone?
Yep. But it's at the detriment of myself, my family, and the other residents on Orchard Hill and Foster Street. This is based on the information that you have published on your site. I'm basing this on the applications that you have. A lot of this is very open to interpretation as far as who can live there, occupy there, transfer ownership to. It's not going to be able to maintain a 55-plus community for very long based on the applications that you have here. Looking at the document that was the affordability plan for the housing opportunity units, Section 7, the purchaser eligibility agreement, or eligibility section, has no mention on age restriction as being the primary eligibility requirement.
What section again?
Section 7, purchaser eligibility.
Okay.
Section 8, affirmative fair housing marketing plan. Very nicely outlines and doesn't discriminate against race, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, sex, gender, identity or expression, marital status, lawful source or income, familial status, learning disability or physical disability, but it doesn't discriminate against age either. So it can be any age. Section 9, application process. Has an application process, has an interview process, but doesn't make any requirement for age. Also has language that is inclusive and designating the status of individuals who are family, which means any number of other residents who are under 55 can also reside in this location. Section 13, I guess it is, I'm trying to remember my Roman numerals, 13 principal residents. Does not mention who the enforcing body exactly is in the community, if this was referring to the town of South Windsor or not, or some sort of other enforcement of the 55-plus community itself. Section 15, resale of the housing opportunity units, makes no age restriction to whom can purchase the opportunity units.
Can you wrap up pretty quickly here?
Yeah, I just want to say that it's definitely going to impact everybody in the general area. I mean, this is quickly going to become a non-55 plus development. The only reason it was here is to create as many high-density units as they could possibly get, and it's just going to follow other condo complex like in Northeast, near Vernon, Northeast School System, which removed age restrictions on their 55 plus. There was also a development in Ellington, which also eventually removed their restrictions on 55 plus. And I find it that this is, might as well just call this a condo complex and say there's going to be 500 or 200 and something vehicles coming in and out of here.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm kind of short here, sorry. My name is Kimberly Feiner. You just heard my husband from 38 Orchard Hill Drive. I'm totally against this thing. Not that I'm against it, seniors, because I'm 62. But let's face it, 62 years old. I can go buy one of those condominiums for $360,000. And their specifications, it does not tell me I can't have my 23-year-old son live with me and his girlfriend live with me, my other daughter live with me. It does not say that at all. So I can actually go buy one of those, right? And the mortgage will outlive my life, and I can will it to anybody I want. So how is that senior housing? I think that's just a smoke show to come in here and sell 42 condominiums, as they say, houses, to anybody who wants to come up with $360,000, make a profit, and go under the senior affordable housing. I don't buy that at all. Because who at that age, so 55 comes in, okay, you're gonna get a 30-year mortgage on that? Are you gonna live to 85 to pay it off? And then who gets it after that? My concern is the future. South Windsor is a community of families. I have people that live on that street that have lived there since they were born, and they're family orientated, right? We look outside in our backyard, and right now, where I live, we see the Canadian geese come in twice a year. They're under the Migrate Act, right? But that doesn't mean, because they don't rest, they're just resting there. You know, they don't nest or mate, I don't know, I don't go look. But I do know that they come there twice a year. There's deer that come through there. Where are they gonna go? The wild turkeys that come through there. All the wildlife that is there is going to be gone. And that rock wall that they're talking about that's on my property, yeah, that will stay. If I have to get an attorney to make sure it stays, I will. But I'm totally against this because they haven't projected the future of the 55. I have got no problem with that. But 55 and seniors, you don't say how many people can live in that house at all. So I'm with my husband on that. Like, they need to be more specific. They're putting laminate stuff in there. The cheapest way they can build it, they're building it. That's just a smoke show. I don't care what they say, how do they say it. But in my opinion, they just want to make a buck on those 42 buildings and have affordable housing. I don't know how they're going to make the other 8 affordable to live in that kind of community. This is in California. This is in Florida. We don't need we have all these senior housings already, don't we? We have the assisted living right on Foster Street and Deming Road, right there in the corner. We have plenty of senior housing. We don't need another one, especially like this. This is a high-cost retirement home for seniors that I don't think are going to stay seniors. I think it's going to be my 38-year-old daughter buying one in the future. I hope you guys do a lot of research on everything that they're presenting before you disrupt everybody's family on those streets. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sir, in back.
Good evening. My name is Stratos Pesanes. I am at 106 Orchard Hill Drive. I've been a resident there for 42 years. Prior to that, I was on Oakwood Drive. Prior to that, I was on Norman Drive. So I'm a long life resident of South Windsor since we immigrated to this country in '66. I have to agree with a couple from 38 Orchard Hill Drive. Plus, okay, let's see now. The solar panel farm went down, so how else can we destroy a nice piece of agriculture land? They'll do a cluster of homes and call them 55 and above. Like the lady said, I've seen deer, bobcat, black bear, everything go through that property. And if my memory serves correct, the same process was about 25 or 28 years ago to build a senior center again on the same property. And then again, we found ourselves in front of the zoning board here to see our opinions. But you know, everything in theory sounds so great, huh? At the top of the hill, are they gonna cut down all those tree lines, the big forest they have back there, to build more homes? Because to me, when I saw the map, it looks like they're gonna cut down a lot of big trees. They're right behind the Perillo's property, my neighbor. So the bottom line is, leave it as agriculture land, and I'm opposed totally with that property. Leave it alone, leave it like it is. That I've seen this town grow so much. I used to go to Orchard Hill Elementary School. Across the street were potato fields. I understand we need growth, but let's do it right, not wherever we please. Let's do what's best for our town. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir?
My name is Gregory Massoda. I'm a lifelong resident
Can
of
you raise
South...
up the microphone?
There we go. My name is Gregory Massoda. I'm a lifelong resident of South Windsor, Connecticut. I live at 24 Orchard Hill Drive. My mom purchased the house, who recently passed away in 1967. I have lived there since 1974. I think Chris and Kim gave a great presentation, and instead of repeating everything they basically went over, I just want to make sure I'm on the record and say I'm totally against this, and I agree with what they said. I think there's way too many unanswered questions, and I just wanted to make sure I got on the record to state that fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Sir?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is John Callahan, 54 Orchard Hill Drive. My wife, I think, sent an email this morning with comments as well, so I hope those get read into the record. We just bought our house last summer. I feel the rug is being pulled off from under us for our beautiful backyard to be replaced with a bunch of senior housing. I have 5 children. We've lived in South Windsor ever since we started having kids. Just love the town. We actually lived in Andover, Connecticut for a year and moved right back to South Windsor. Love being here. Would not have bought the house if we knew this was going in. I'm proud to live next to the Finers, and I would, beyond that, beyond the neighbors we've met, I would not have chosen this house if I knew this was going to happen. South Windsor is it's a beautiful town. It's got a great mix of being great schools. We're on Orchard Hill Drive. We're right near the school. But it's also got a wonderful rural environment as well, while still being close. I work at the Hartford, so we're able to be near the city. We're able to go shopping. We're able to have a nice lifestyle, but it's also got great farmers markets. It's got great athletic events. It's got great fields. It's got great nature preserves. These things are being lost. I can't believe. My father-in-law checked out the house when we were deciding to buy last summer. We used to live on Mohegan Trail. Now we live at Orchard Hill. He said, you have the best backyard neighbor you can imagine. What's going to come in? We have mice in our backyard, maybe, from the field. Thank you for the fox exterminators. That's the only risk. That's the only thing going on back there. No, how about 55-plus community? It's a letdown. South Windsor it's a wonderful town, and I hate to see what this would do to the town. To think that this isn't going to change the environment, that, you know, I don't care what the buildings look like, it will not look like a farm. It will look a lot different. I don't care what the architecture looks like on those buildings. They will not fit with the environment of a tobacco field, of a field. So it's hard to buy all those cars coming in and out. You could just do it once a day. The traffic will be busy. Foster is a pretty narrow road. I used to live over Mohegan. Is if you take a left versus taking a right on Orchard Hill. It's already a narrow road. I already feel like I'm going to hit the curb a lot of times. If my wife is driving, we sometimes do. It's a risk, and I'm really frustrated. I wish we'd known about this a year ago, because I never would have met the Finers, and we would have not bought the house. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We weren't paying attention.
I'm sorry?
No, I was talking to the gentleman who asked you to sign in. Is there anyone else? Sir, in the back?
You're welcome. My name's Alton Etheridge. Just bought the house on Foster Street, 178. So I wasn't going to get up and speak. I just wanted to listen, kind of take things in here. 3 sides of our property are going to be affected by this. I met with Mr. Boynton last week. Nice guy, great plans. Everything is fantastic on paper. I haven't met any of my neighbors yet, but they brought up some great points that I wasn't really considering. I heard some things tonight, such as the crosswalk with sound that will be right on the front corner of my house. The street lights, the light pollution's beautiful on our back porch right now. Go out there, you look up, you see everything. We've seen a lot of the wildlife there. I've only been there a couple of months now. When I first started looking at the house, I didn't know that there was plans to build there. We were told about the plans. I guess it was a couple of weeks before the closing, and I didn't know they were as far advanced as they are until recently. I think we got sent a letter from the lawyer that showed these plans. So I just wanted to get up, say my piece, and say that, like the gentleman before me, if I had known this when we first started looking at the house, I probably would not have bought the house. And I had time to back out of this deal, finding out that there was going to be a development a couple of weeks before our closing. When you're that close to a house closing, you know, on a big, beautiful property, you're like, okay, well, we can deal with that. We can live with that. However, if things were different and I would have known now if I would have known then what I know now, I probably would not have bought this house either. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we have a letter.
This letter, as referenced before, is from Mary Callahan. I think Mr. Callahan has already come up. I regret not being able to attend the Planning and Zoning Commission tonight, but would like to comment on the proposed application 25-08P, the Orchard Point Senior Residence Development. We live directly behind the property at 54 Orchard Hill Drive with our 5 children. We're concerned for several reasons about this development. First of all, the traffic. Foster Street is quite narrow. There are already lots of cars that go speedily up and down that road, as well as on Orchard Hill Drive. It is already quite busy on the roads, and I'd imagine that 50 more residential units would not help this situation. Second,
Excuse me, please respect the speaker.
Second, we see the town of South Windsor changing. We love this town. It has a unique country feel with lots of beauty, nature, animals, as well as countless opportunities for an active family life. We moved into this house this past summer, drawn to the property because of the farmland and natural beauty in the backyard. The kids love playing in the little wooded areas, seeing the geese land in the field behind us, and watching the turkeys walk around aimlessly. This development would change the family life we had envisioned when buying this property. We have lived in South Windsor since 2015, moved away for 1 year as our family outgrew the old house, and sacrificed in this tough market to come back because we miss the town so much. It's truly a unique place with a great combination of the country and city feel. None of the neighboring towns have what South Windsor has to offer. We are afraid of South Windsor losing its beauty and country feel, things which draw young families who are trying to raise children to love nature and the outdoors. Thank you much for your time. We just wanted to take the time to express this for our sake of our growing family. Thanks, John and Mary Callahan, 54 Orchard Hill Drive.
Thank you. Is that the only letter? Okay. All right, well now, we'll call on you in a minute, okay. We now have commissioners. I guess we'll start back with Mr. Karashi. And you can invite anyone out there to speak.
Okay, the first one is,
Never mind.
first one is, I think more of a comment because I'm always underwhelmed at the traffic studies. In this case, it seems to me that it's gonna generate enough traffic to be concerning on Foster Street. So I'm not sure how you project that over 1, 2, 5, 10 years, because the study seems to just look at average numbers in most cases. And it's true on the street that I live too, so I'm not sure, I don't know anything that can be done about it, but the traffic numbers seem light to me, because I don't think they project out years, and they don't take into account delivery trucks, mail trucks, things like that. I do notice, so this is a question for maybe the applicant. The trees along the border, if you could come up, one of you. So we heard in the comments as well, and when I look at the plans, the trees along the border seem quite heavy to me, but in one of the plans, they were lighter. Are you planning to remove some of the trees along the border, both sides? As part of this development, are there any trees that are going to be removed?
Yes, there are trees. There's an existing tree line along the northern border and the eastern border. Much of those they will be cleared back in order to allow for the grading and the development. And we are going to be replacing, there's really not a lot of big trees along the northern border. The applicant was out there, most of it's brush. So that really doesn't provide much for screening anyway, especially in the winter. So we are going to be replacing that with a series
You're going to add trees?
of evergreen trees, which will provide permanent screening.
I noticed that along where the barn is, there's lighting missing. Is that on purpose? Unless I read the lighting chart incorrectly.
I believe, based on the lighting plan that was handed out, there are...
I can see the lights on the barn itself, but not like lamp.
Post-mounted lights, right now we're just proposing post-mounted lights up near the parking and the main entrance, which would be at this corner of the...
And that's on purpose because you don't want to encourage pickleball at nighttime, things like that?
The rest would be just pretty much, the building-mounted lights.
Thank you. And this one, I think it's more of a clarification for me. It's come up in the past, Michelle, where we talk about 55-plus communities, and people are looking for guarantees as to how do we enforce that over years.
Yeah, and I think the attorney is probably going to address that. The 55 and older.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Yes, and that has been a comment raised by a number of people this evening about, well, how do we ensure that it will be a 55 and older community? Well, it's actually very commonly done. South Windsor has some already. A number of towns have senior residences. 55 and older is built into the common interest community documents. In order to create a common interest community, a declaration has to be filed. We don't submit that tonight with this. There's a lot of legal terminology in it, and that's something that we work out with the town attorney. But in order to create a common interest community, you file your declaration. It defines what the units are. It defines what the open or common elements are. It defines people's responsibilities, and in there you build in the 55 and older requirement. There was some talk about, in the affordability plan, it doesn't reference it. Well, they work together. Actually, the affordability plan, does that get recorded, Michelle? Or is that just on file with the, it gets recorded? Okay, I was gonna say, if it wasn't recorded, at least the declaration is recorded. That's for everybody, whoever is going to come to buy this property is going to see it in their chain of title and know, per this declaration, I can only buy this if the primary resident is going to be 55 and older. It's correct, there's no restriction in there that says that 55 and older, that it has to be only people who are 55 and older. You could have a 55-year-old woman who's married to a 45-year-old man living there. You could have a 55-year-old woman or a 60-year-old woman who has her college-age children living there with her. So it's not intended to be solely for 55, but you do have to have the residents, one of the primary residents, be 55 and older. And that is an enforceable document, it's an enforceable requirement. It doesn't violate federal laws having to do with age discrimination, because there's actually, in the Fair Housing Act, there's a section that specifically allows you to have 55 and older housing, and it has to comply with the requirements in this declaration that we commonly prepare and file on the land records. So it's an enforceable document. It will be reviewed by the town attorney. It will be recorded on the land records, and anybody who's coming to own this property has to comply with the restrictions in the declaration.
And that carries deed transfers?
It runs with the land forever. It goes on unless terminated, and it would only be terminated by, well, first of all, it couldn't because it's a requirement for the zoning regs, but let's say it wasn't a requirement. If you had, I think it's 80% or more of the unit owners and all their lenders who said, okay, we're gonna modify and terminate our declaration, there's a process for that. But not if it runs afoul of your zoning, because then you have an illegal use there. So it will have to remain an enforceable 55 and older community.
And I don't know how you project this or add this, because it's not part of this. It could mean that they're school-age kids.
Arguably, there could be. However, the likelihood of it is lower because you've got the 55 and older. So would they be in an elementary school versus, maybe in a secondary school or college at that point? I can tell you based on my client's experience, and my client's built many, many homes. Not all age restricted. He's just finishing an unage restricted development in Manchester, and I would say the vast majority of his buyers there are 55 plus with no children at home. They're your empty nesters. They're your people who are looking to scale down from their larger homes into something a little smaller, a little more manageable. They have the association now who will be shoveling or plowing their driveways and their roads and things like that, so they don't have to worry about that. They don't have the yard maintenance anymore. So we can't build into the document that someone who meets the ownership requirements can't have a younger school-age child there, but the likelihood of having school-age children is much lower than if you had a conventional subdivision here.
It's probably anecdotal, but is there some statistic you could share based on communities that you've built? What the potential school?
So in Manchester, how many houses were built over there? 44 houses in a conventional subdivision in Manchester. And how many of those houses do you think have school-age children in them? One out of 44. And the rest are, and probably don't even have, forget school-age children, probably don't even have any children there. They're mostly just, a married or single couple.
Michelle?
Maybe grandchildren come visit, yeah.
Before you move on to another subject, I'd like Michelle to comment.
Yeah,
on-
we did have, with our last text amendment, if you recall, the attorney represented to us that you could restrict 18, them to be 18 to live there. That was represented to us.
I would have to look into that. That's
Yeah,
not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah, because we had the same discussion, if you recall, when we were talking about the Newberry text amendment. I apologize, her name escapes me right now. So yeah, Attorney Pearson, yeah.
Okay.
So, because we did have this discussion, and she did indicate that that did meet the fair housing, and you could have it restricted to 18 years old and older members there. So maybe we can revisit those minutes.
That,
and-
yeah,
We
later.
can work that into the declaration, and work with the town attorney on appropriate language.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I'll let everyone finish asking questions. I have plenty more to respond to, but that.
Go ahead.
All right. So I do have a few questions as well, if you want to stay up. I may ask them. Let's see. So I'm curious. I do want to go back to the traffic. I mean, that's one of the more, I guess, glaring factors here. In the report, it states there's 3,167 vehicle trips per day. Obviously, that fluctuates. It's not exact per day. With this, it would add 329 additional daily trips. There are, 50 units, assuming most of them drive, maybe some of them don't. Got to come home, got to come back, double 50 up to 100, cut down a little bit. I'm trying to project this in my head. So other than the individuals that live there, maybe they have some guests every now and then, what else are you accounting for, let's say, besides the post office truck? I'm curious how that number is 329. How else are you accounting for that?
Well, Tim can probably answer this better than I can, but the traffic consultants and traffic engineers use what's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Report. It's very standardized data based on specific uses. There's probably a use category, not just for single family, multifamily. I expect there's a use category specifically for age restricted.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, yes, it says right here. Land Use Code 251, which is senior adult housing, single family. So engineers who are way smarter than I come up with these numbers and say, based on experience, based on real experience, this is what we project based on number of units. So they're projecting really, it's a very reasonable number. For the 50 units, they're projecting daily trips of 329, but that's just with 23 peak hour in the morning and 26 peak hour in the afternoon trips, which is a very small amount on that road network. And in fact, it's not going to change the overall levels of service on that existing road. It should be, the existing road should accommodate it just fine. Did I say anything you want to add to?
The only thing I would add is that.
Get next to the microphone, please.
Sorry. Those ITE trip generation numbers, they actually, they're data sets. They go out to similar facilities and they count the traffics. So they're including not only the residents, they're including any vehicle that goes in and out of that development. So it's not just the residents. And they take those back and then they sift through and come up with these numbers to estimate what the generated traffic would be.
Okay.
So that would contemplate fuel delivery or package delivery or, things of that nature.
Okay. I was just curious how that number came to be for this project. I do have a couple other questions as well, going back to the 55-plus question. A resident raised a question of that. It's not technically in writing. There's no way to, I shouldn't say enforce it, but it's not really in writing when we pass this. Is that necessarily true, like what we're voting on, not tonight, but obviously when we do close a public hearing and vote on it, is there actual language that says word for word that this has to be 55 plus? I just want to get that on the record.
The regulation for senior residence development in 7.17 specifically requires for the form of ownership of an SRD to be a common interest community. And the declaration will have to be then approved by the town attorney. So although the affordability plan doesn't refer to it, that's just one component of this. Now remember, this is two things. This is an age restricted, so 55 and older, which is really going to be set primarily by the declaration. And then it's also got, because your regulations require an affordability component for multifamily dwelling, or for multifamily developments, 15% have to be set aside. That's 8 units. And we have to have a specific affordability plan as to how we're going to market and ensure that those 8 units will stay for the next 40 years affordable to people making 80% of the median income. Now, not only will they have to make 80% of the median income, but yes, they also have to meet the other component to be a senior residence development, 55 and older.
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to put that on the record and clarify. I know it's not going to be, you know, in a plan that you just provided. Just wanted to make sure I covered that. I do want to make a comment. I'll go back to a question here. We do have other developments in town, such as this is being proposed. I feel like Strawberry Fields is a comparable example, and I wouldn't necessarily, qualitatively describe it as, you know, it not fitting in with the character of the town. I think that is down to interpretation. But looking at what is being proposed here, I do have a question about how this does fit. And I mean, a lot of these, we talk about senior housing. A lot of them, and I was able to look at the plans before we passed it forward, but a lot of them are 3-bedroom units, and some of them are 3 bedrooms with an option to have an office, which could be a 4th bedroom if someone does not want an office. So I'm curious why that is, if it's sort of driven by market demand. I'm not entirely sure why 3 bedrooms would be needed unless someone is in their 90s and they want their, I don't want to say child, but their child living with them that happen to be maybe 65.
Or
I'm trying
caregiver.
to.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But that scenario is very rare, so I'm curious why that is.
Okay, so, excuse me one second. Ken, do all of the floor plans that we submitted show 3 bedrooms? Okay. And I'm sorry, maybe, and yes, in your experience, let's go back to Manchester.
Yep.
Back to Manchester, where we have 44 single-family homes in a conventional subdivision, one of which has a school-aged child in it. Those are 3 bedrooms? Okay, and the majority of those are being used as maybe a master bedroom and a guest bedroom and an office. Maybe they want 2 guest bedrooms. Maybe they need a room for a caregiver. In my client's experience, this floor plan is extraordinarily desirable for this demographic. So that's why they have the option of 3 bedrooms. If they don't want it to be built out to a bedroom, again, they could use it as an office. They don't have to put closets in it, and it could just be, you know, whatever they want to use it for. But the good thing is, you know, as my client works with his buyers, he can kind of customize the interior to their specifications and needs. So if, again, they would rather have an office with double doors as opposed to a typical bedroom door, that you can modify accordingly.
Of course. I have 2 more questions, and I'll pass it off. I appreciate that. I'm not sure I'll necessarily agree with that, because I would not want to require 3 bedrooms and an office to be built, because there's a chance that it may not get built. That is sort of a trickle-down cost to the tenant or the resident there to make it less affordable. I don't really agree with that, but it is what it is. We'll come back to it. I do have 2 other questions, like I said. This is really with the lighting, and I'm curious. And I'm like an astronomy nerd, so I study light pollution a little bit here. And so looking at the lighting, you provided us the poles and lighting sheet. So reading through it, you know, it talks about LED emitters and optics. It talks about optical clarity. I'm curious, like, just putting on the record, like these lights that we'll be proposing, we'll be building, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, in previous years compared to now, are they going to be better for light pollution? Are they, like, obviously state-of-the-art, like, compared to what has been built in South Windsor in the past?
Again, she might want to add on this, but the fixtures are going to be dark sky compliant. They will be all downlit. They will be shielded so that they don't spill over. They're not floodlights. They are probably a vast improvement to a lot of historic lighting in town. And this is where all the towns are going with it. They really want to prevent that excessive lighting, that spillover onto property lines, onto public streets, that light pollution. And when we laid out the plan with our lighting consultant, we used the guidelines in your regulations. Now, they're guidelines. They're in the appendix. They're not quite a requirement. And in order to meet those guidelines, it showed that we needed X amount of lights. And we're happy to work with staff to reduce those lights. If they think it's excessive and it's more than it needs to, again, we were trying to meet the guideline. If the town staff says that that's more than what we need, we will dial that back absolutely with no objection.
Okay, good to know.
That answer your question about the fixture, though?
Yes. I just wanted to make sure I get that on the record as well. My last question is talk about the trees that are going to be put up. I don't want to say abutting, but right alongside the road, sort of as like a buffer of vegetation. I'm curious when that's fully going to grow in, because I'm really curious.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the street trees along our internal road or along Foster?
Well, we could do both, but I was referring to Foster.
Okay, so that's going to be a Tim question.
Yeah, and actually, it's a landscape architect question. We are building, this is actually, there's going to be a 4-foot berm,
Okay.
and these will be planted on top of those. The specific tree, the way she does this is she calls out for a specific, whether it be deciduous or something, and then she provides a selection. So it'll be whatever that tree symbol is, there's a choice of a certain number of trees that'll go there. But the size of the tree, I believe all that is in the, and I'll have to look that up, because I don't have. Yeah, I believe they're all, what are they? 2.5 to 3? It depends on the tree.
I think we talked about this with design review, didn't we? I think architectural design review, I think we talked about it being 4 feet or so on planting, but if we can get larger specimens, then we'd be happy to put them in. Yeah. On planting, I think they're gonna be around 4 feet or so.
Okay. All right.
Yes, that answered
answer the question? Okay.
Yes, I will say before I wrap it up, that the reason why I asked some of these questions is obviously with these bigger applications, I want to get some of this stuff on the record so other residents know it, so other commissioners know it. So I hope these questions weren't redundant. I just wanted to make sure we got it on the record. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernstein.
So this commission is very vigilant in terms of protecting our schools because of overcrowding. If you are familiar with any of the applications that have come before us over the past number of years, you would know that. So this whole notion of, is it 55 or is it not, or something in the declaration, that's a big concern to me. And the first gentleman from the public that stood up and went through your document and pointed out all the areas that didn't indicate any age restriction, that's a red flag for me because it seems to open the door for a problem with overcrowding our schools. And I know that we have many senior residence housing facilities in the town that are truly just senior housing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get there with this?
Again, I don't want to repeat myself unnecessarily, but the declaration is how we get there. The affordability plan is one component, just one component of this.
Right.
And that's all that we're required to submit with a special exception is so that the town attorney could review it and make sure that we have the 15% set aside as affordable. The declaration is how we get to the 55 and older restriction. And if there is an ability to limit it also to no children under 18, again, that's not something I was familiar with, but if we can build that into the declaration, happy to work with the town attorney on that. But the declaration is kind of, we don't prepare that until we're ready to declare units and declare the development. So it's putting the cart before the horse to do the declaration now. We have to get the plan approved, know what the plan looks like so we can appropriately write the declaration to describe, here's what our units are, here's what was approved, here's what our common elements are, here's what was approved. And then we can build those restrictions in there. It's an absolute requirement. It's required by your regulations. It is a very common requirement. It's something that we've done in the past. We will work with the town attorney, and that will be filed on the land records before any units are sold.
Humor me
Yes.
on something for a moment. Andy, would you mind helping me out? Could you step up to the... What I want to ask him is, he lives at Strawberry Fields. How do they do it? How is it assured that there isn't any negative impact to our schools in a place like Strawberry Fields?
I can tell you two things that happened. The first time we went to purchase in Strawberry Fields, the real estate agent came to us with that declaration document in his hand. And he said, here are the requirements. Are you over 55? If you're not, I can't even talk to you.
Okay.
Secondly, I haven't been there 25 years, but the development is 25 years old. There's only been one instance of a student, high school student, living there with their parents in 25 years. So those are the two, that's my personal experience.
All right, I'm sorry to blindside you, but thank you.
It's okay, I love Strawberry Fields. And the grandkids are only visiting, they're not staying.
The only other question, Michelle, when senior housing applications come before us, is there any process to inform Andrea and the senior center about it? Because this impacts her too.
Yeah, she's aware of it. I
Okay.
mean, we let staff know of every application that comes in, so every department is made aware of it. As Andrea's biggest concern, and I've expressed this a couple times, is the need for busing that will be generated out of this. So again, it's single-family housing, so the town will, these folks will be available to contact the senior center. I think Andrea's concern is with some of our bigger developments where we're talking about independent living facilities and whatnot.
Right.
Providing the busing there, because it does start to, the more we create, the more the need is.
That's
right?
all I have. Thank you.
Most of the questions and comments have already been touched on, but again, when you say putting the cart before the horse with the declaration prior to, or doing the, so many times we have these expert opinions, whether it be traffic studies and housing, and we've been burned countless times, right? I mean, we've been hit hard. So that's why we're kind of, we put our hands up, and we're a little leery with everybody's experts.
I can assure you the COs won't be issued
We've been assured
without.
so many times.
That the town will not have the ability to issue a CO if it doesn't comply.
What we want is, in your declaration, there will be 0 students going to South Windsor schools. However that gets written, you can put ages or whatever, but there's to be no one going to our school system. That's emphatic.
Yes, we can put into the
So-
declaration. Again, I will work with town staff on it and the town attorney on it. I'm not exactly sure if we can say 0 students, or if we have to say they can't be 18 or they can't be under 18. I have to, I mean, obviously you want it to be a legally enforceable document. I will work with the town attorney to make sure that it's at least, an 18+ restriction.
All right, and then, like I said, most things have been touched on. The landscape design on this, is this your firm that took care of this? Was it Russo, or you outsourced it?
He was with J.R. Russo.
All right.
No, the landscape plan was prepared by LADAPC. They're a landscaping company.
All right, my only comment on this is the size. If it's an impact to the neighbors, all right? And I'm looking at the aerial view of the growth. I've not walked along that stone wall that's on Orchard Hill to take a look, but we've done it in the past where we've preserved, I mean, most of this is deciduous growth, but we have preserved quality trees where it's possible, which I think is important to the neighbors. And then the sizing of the buffer, it's an all evergreen buffer zone, but 4 to 5 feet is not adequate and I don't care what the other parties said prior to, so.
Can I address that?
Sure.
Okay, so technically, a landscaped buffer is not required for this development. We went back and forth with staff on this because SRD is a residential development. So I think at some point, years ago, Michelle had advised us that the commission took the formal buffer requirement for residential to residential and then SRD out. However, there is still a landscaping requirement in there. There's still, you have to have an adequate landscape plan. Now, because of that, because we're not looking to have a full screen necessarily, that's how we came up with the landscaping plan. We said, okay, there are some pockets. There was a lot of shrub along that northerly line. Really, not a lot worth preserving and nothing that was a meaningful buffer. In addition, when we talk about this whole buffer, really, to do a buffer with the topographic difference between where this property sits and everything up on Orchard Hill is much higher, you're not going to be able to, they're looking over the top of it. It's a big dip down.
Yeah.
So we said, what we have to do is provide some treatment along that line, fill in some gaps, make it look pretty, both for the residents and for the people on Orchard, break it up so it's not just one open, long northerly property line. We also still have those stone walls that are on the property line there. I mean, to not have them exposed and visible would be a shame to have like a big, vinyl fence along the whole northerly line. So that's why with working with our landscape architect, we plotted the areas where we would have these bunches of evergreen planted on the northerly property line to break up that expanse of the property line, right?
Yeah, it's in the the rear yard of pretty much every resident on Orchard Hill. What I'm just saying, instead of going 4 to 5 feet, I mean, 4 feet's not very big. And I'm just saying, can we go to 6 to 8?
Oh, I'm sorry, are you talking about the size of the tree on planting?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
And we talked to design review about this too, and they asked the same question. The regulations require, I think, 4 to 5 feet or so on planting. But if we're able to get bigger specimens, then we can do that. It's a matter of really, weren't you talking about what's available at the time of planting? They made the same comment. They said, obviously you have to comply with the regulations. So the minimum size, I don't have it in front of me. Do you have that? Yeah. Okay.
5 to
So what
6
does
is
it say on
typical.
the plan up there? Can you zoom in and see that?
I'm going to have to find it.
I just want to find this too, because I know we talked about this the other day. Excuse me one moment.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are looking for the minimum. We're trying to make a maximum development out of this. So.
Is there a chapter and verse, Michelle, that we can look
Somebody made a comment about linoleum. Well, I'm talking about the outside. So, let's not go with the minimum. You don't have to even go through your book.
So we have, again, let me, I'm sorry, just a minute. Okay, so what are we showing there?
4 to 5 feet.
We're showing 4 to 5 feet there. If you want us to put 5 to 6 feet, if we can get a larger, then we will.
You can get them.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. And I do appreciate you saving the barn and repurposing that rather than tearing it down.
Yeah, it's probably going to cost him more to repurpose it than take it down, but it's a special feature on the property. People are used to the area being a farm. It plays heritage to the rural, feel of the area. So yeah.
No, the tobacco that was grown on that land hung in that barn, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Dexter.
Just a couple things. Michelle, was the flashing beacon a request by the town?
Well, we talked about a concern about trying to get sidewalk connectivity, right? And how do we accomplish that? And so initially, the thought was to try to have a sidewalk go north up to Orchard Hill where there's, you want to promote crossing at intersections where possible. This mid-block crossing obviously is another alternative. I don't know that we knew that it was being proposed, at least I didn't know until today.
Oh, okay.
Or just with the revised plans. I think we do want to run it by our police and engineering to make sure that everybody's comfortable. It was talked about, but again, we were just talking about different ideas. There will be sidewalks put on that side of
the
Foster
development?
Street, so
Okay.
this would get folks at, and the idea is you push it. You have it further up or Foster Street by the school, the same
Oh,
the same
there's a
kind of.
flashing one there?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So, again, I would want police and engineering just to review it and make sure that it meets the.
I mean, I know the sound is part of it for folks who don't hear, but maybe we don't have to have it.
We have a
blaring.
proposed, we just approved it, the Crosstown Trail over on Ellington Road. So
Right, right.
you're seeing this as an application more and more. Mid-block crossings, you don't really want to encourage if you can't, but if you're going to have them, I mean, if there's a sidewalk there and folks want to go there, they're going to cross if you don't give them away. So this may be the safest way.
Thank you. My second question, I know they're condos, I know they're not for sale, they're not for rent, they're for sale. Is there anything that says the owner has to be the occupant?
Well, in the affordability plan, I know at least for the income restricted ones, I know it does. I haven't like I said, we haven't put together the declaration yet, but I think that, yes, I think the
That would
owner
be
is
good.
typically the occupant.
I think so.
So we talked about that again at our last public hearing. So if the owner dies and it's willed to me, who's not 55,
Yeah.
I still own it, but I can't live there because I have to be 55 to live there. So there is
so
a
you have-
distinction to be made there. Right, you have to be 55 to live there, but, you know, again, you can't deny someone owning property if, you know, you get it when, as part of a,
Probate, yeah.
you know, from that situation. And we did discuss that, and that's how Attorney Pearson said it would be handled, you know, through the documents.
Okay. I just don't, you know, I'm just envisioning investors coming in, buying up a bunch of units and just renting them out. And I hope that's not, we can avoid that. That's all.
We did have one SRD that was a rental unit for a period of time before it was sold, so we don't dictate that through our regulation.
Okay. And then just the final thing, in looking at the Affordable Housing Plan on page 15, in full transparency, and I thank you, you give us the 8 addresses of the affordable units.
Oh, yes.
So when I look at the layout and I find those 8 addresses, 6 of the 8 are the duplexes.
Yes.
That was obviously intentional because of the what these units would cost, perhaps.
Well,
It's a little disappointing. I mean, even the 7th unit is near the barn where all the activities are, so not as great a unit. So it's noticeable to me that.
So the affordable units from the exterior, even though they're duplexes, you can tell from the renderings, they look the same, and they're kind of offset. They're not like butt up right next to each other. They're kind of offset, so they still, you know, have a differentiation from unit to unit. So the exterior appearance is still the same. In fact, I think, didn't you say, Ken, on the duplexes that the floor plan is even a little bit bigger than the minimum size floor plan you allowed because you needed it to accommodate the duplex structure? So they're not even the smallest of the units. But yes, a lot of this is driven by, obviously, you know, cost. I mean, these units, they're not even going to be a break even for any developer. They are going to be, they have to have the same exterior. The interior, you know, the bulk of the house cost goes into building the frame, right, and the exterior.
We have in our regs that they're not supposed to be singled out in any way. And if anybody were to drive around and see those 3 duplexes, okay, those are the affordable units.
Well, they won't be the only ones, but they're going to look very similar to the standalone single families. There'll be 2 also standalone single families, and they will look on the exterior, same materials, same style, same, actually, the exterior will look the same size. The interior will, in fact, be a little bit bigger.
That's
and
good.
we tried to space them so that they would be, you know, in each phase, and put them so that they're not all, you know, in one area.
That was good.
Yeah.
I noticed, though. Thank you.
Can I, did you have any other questions? Before we leave you, I just want to talk about the sidewalk for a second, because you brought that up. I don't want you to think that we ignored staff's request to look into building sidewalks on the east side of the street. We did look into that. The reason that we proposed the crosswalk to the sidewalks on the west instead of the east side is because the topography going up the east side would be very onerous for constructing sidewalks within the town's right-of-way and would likely require a number of retaining walls, which is an additional expense and maintenance obligation for the town-owned sidewalks, right? So, and then we said, well, if we're going to be going north, there's going to be sidewalks going north anyway on the west side. Let's get them a safe way to get over there. And anyone who wants to go south, they're not going to go up our sidewalks on our side of the street north to cross to come back south again.
Yeah.
They're going to cut across the road right there and go south. So we just thought it made a heck of a lot more sense because of the difficulty of getting sidewalks there and knowing that the town's got a plan for sidewalks on the west side to put a crossing in. And that's where then we say, what can we do to make it the safest crossing possible? Because yes, it is a mid-block crossing. There's no, the traffic on Foster doesn't have a stop sign on either side. It's only stop controlled when we exit our site out onto Foster. They are done elsewhere in town. You know, if you go up Foster and take a right onto Orchard, I think I saw one up there near Mountain. What's the name of that road there? Yeah, and there's no stop control there either, it was just a sidewalk, and I don't think that one had the light-up lights. It was an additional safety procedure. If you don't want it, then that's one thing, you know, or we could talk to the, you know, the police about it and see what their recommendation is. We just thought, you know, it would be an additional safety precaution to have someone be able to push a button, have the light go on so that people can be notified before they get to the crosswalk, either way, that there are going to be people crossing the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Willett.
So, only one question to gain clarity. In the application, number 15, it talks about a hold harmless agreement to enable town vehicles to go on property, to get garbage and recycle. Are there any other burdens on the town aside from collection of garbage and recycling? Any maintenance, plowing, nothing?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, the town,
Who's plowing this now?
the association will take care of it. It's a private road. The association will take care of plowing the roads and plowing the sidewalks, shoveling the sidewalks, taking care of all the landscaping, everything interior. The lights will be, you know, privately owned, I expect also. So the power bill will be paid by the association for any interior lights, right? And then, yeah, I just think, and we weren't even sure what the town's policy was on trash pickup, but when we were talking at the staff meeting last week, we talked about a number of these issues. I believe it was the town engineer who said he was going to look into that, and he was pretty sure that the town would pick up the the trash.
Senior project.
Most of my questions were asked, but just to go back to the rental, so I understand Michelle's example of somebody, right, if it's someone passes away and somebody else inherits the property and we may have to, but you can't also rent, but if you, the rental, there would still be the restriction of 55 and over, or, and if we did put it in there, 18 and over.
Right, the occupant would have to be, so the person renting and occupying the unit would have to be 55 and older.
Okay, that was my only question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kupchinas.
Last in line, I think you guys have asked everything, so no comment.
Okay.
No
All right, my turn.
Oh, yes.
The barn, who's the storage, what's the storage for?
Sorry?
The barn has storage, like for,
Oh, yes, so, you want to throw up that rendering just for a second? So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, there will be some storage units in the barn, which will be available for residents to
only for
rent-
residents, it's not
rent
going to
for
be like
storage.
leased out for other people to store
okay.
in there.
And I've had that kind of storage in places I lived. Let's see. I guess I share Commissioner Foley's concern about the screening on the north. Anything you can do to make those trees a little larger. The affordable, you're building this in phases, like you're going to build the first 20 units. Will we have, can we have a condition that the affordable percentages be met in each phase? So phase one doesn't have no affordables and you save it for phase three?
There are affordable units designated in the affordability plan in both phases. And we won't get to phase two until we, you know, construction-wise, you're going to build the phase one first and then start selling in phase two, correct? Right. Yeah. So then there's 4 in phase one and 4 in phase two?
Yeah, we did talk to the applicant about making sure that the amenities get completed at the same rate as the unit. So when phase one is done, the amenities will be done. Because if you recall, Strawberry Fields, we didn't have a clubhouse at the end of a project. So we will have an approval condition recommendation along those lines.
Okay. The introduction to the affordability plan talks about this being a active adult community, mentions a 55 plus. I mean, is that sufficient to ensure us that when we talk about age in here, you know, we're talking about the difference between 30 but let me try it another way. Can we put something in here to say, well, while there are requirements, it does not be a problem with age, that it must meet the 55 and older the 55 plus requirements, anywhere in here where it seems to say, you could have an infant in here.
Well, Matt, I suggest, so in that first paragraph under introduction, where it talks about Orchard Point developers, Connecticut LLC, blah, 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 submits this affordability plan as part of its proposal for a 50-unit SRD. This development, designated as a common interest community under the planned community format, will be known as Orchard Point. Why don't I just add there, and will be governed by the restrictions and terms contained in the declaration? Because it's silly to put all of that language when you have to have it in the declaration into both documents. Both documents are going to be recorded anyway. So I can make specific reference to the declaration.
I think us as a commission want to how do we make sure that the declaration has in it what we need?
Do you want to answer that?
What we can do is, you're looking, we're going to have an approval condition that the declaration has to be filed, and the specifics that you want included in it, we'll state. You want to make sure that the person occupying is 55 and older, and nobody under the 18 can live in the house. I mean, those are the key things that you want in this document. So I think we could, formulate that as part of the approval condition to be reviewed and approved by the town attorney.
Do we have a condition, I forget what the arms are that the fire truck puts out, but stabilizers, is there a condition or something we can do to make sure that, or is that already covered in the engineering comments?
I think in the comments that Justin put on the record tonight, we could formulate a condition out of that. Okay. Out of Walter.
On the other hand, if it's in the engineering comments, it can be handled that way. Okay. I've got a long list of questions that have already been asked, so excuse me for the lighting. How does that compare, the lighting levels, how does it compare to what we have in most of the other streets? I mean, my street has lights that are a few hundred feet apart, a couple hundred, so, and it's fine.
So I could tell you that I looked at the lighting plan earlier today when we received it. It does exceed the recommendations that we have in our regulations. For a neighborhood which is low intensity, we look to have a low of 0.2 foot candles and an average of 0.8. So the plan does exceed that. I think it goes to just shy of, for an average of 1 foot candle. So as I noted, I think we would be looking to decrease that slightly. I personally think there's a little too much light.
Okay.
Yeah,
on the other hand, Commissioner Dexter talked about the lighting by the barn. Is it going to have lighting on the side of the building or something for
building lighting?
Wall mounted.
I believe there will be some wall-mounted lights, yes, that just so that there will be some safety security lights at a minimum at the southern end over the recreation area.
I would mention that I was actually involved in the process of converting all the town streetlights to LEDs, and at that time we controlled both the color because the warmer colors are better for people and animals. And we also controlled the dark sky compliance. And for the most part, we were successful. There's one paragraph in the affordability plan that kind of bothered me. Section 3, construction sequence. It says every 6 market rate homes constructed in one housing opportunity unit must also be built. That's affordable. Provided that there are qualified housing opportunity unit applicants and the developer is actively marketing the qualified opportunity units. It bothers me that, you have to have an applicant before you build. Is that the way the whole site is going to be built?
Well, these are all going to be contract houses. We might put up one spec house to have the office in or at the beginning, but they're going to be built as as we have buyers for them because they're going to be built to how the buyers want them.
Okay, so every unit in there, you know, like the first 20, if you only sell 15, you're going to build 15, and you might not even go on to the next phase.
Correct.
Okay,
That could happen.
all right.
I mean, God willing, it won't, but yes.
I think my questions are answered. Do anybody else have any questions? Do you have other comments?
I just had a couple brief comments following up on, Tim, did you have something else? No? Okay. Following up on just some of the general public comments, if I could. And also, I wanted to address some of the criteria for approval that Justin had mentioned in his memo and taking you through. But let me just get back to my notes here. I think, again, the bulk of the comments, I think, fell into two categories. Number one, how do we ensure that this is going to be 55 and older, and it's not going to be all of a sudden, overrunning the town's schools with additional school-age kids. I think we've exhausted that, and we've addressed that. And the other group of categories is, people got used to living next to a farm. They liked having an open area there. It's not permanently protected farmland. It's not permanently protected town-owned open space. It's land that's zoned appropriately and actually being used now appropriately. It's compatible. It's a compatible use. It's a residential, primarily single-family use with other surrounding single-family zones, homes. There's still a farm on the south side of the property, and there's town and open space. It fits into the area. It's contemplated by the regulations. It's not guaranteed, like I said, to be farmed forever, and I apologize if some people were hoping that it would be, but we're going to be building, we think, a very compatible, upscale, desirable neighborhood there, and we're going to be providing a need. We're going to be filling, I should say, a need. The town's regulations specifically say that we have to look at, for criteria of approval, how does this fit into your overall plan of conservation and development? I had submitted a document, I don't not necessarily read it word for word, but it's dated February 13th that takes you through the general criteria for compliance. But as you can see from that, and as you probably know, the town, just like the rest of the state, there's a housing crisis in the state of Connecticut, and in fact, nationwide. There is a very low availability of housing and an even lower availability of affordable housing. Connecticut's not unique in this. The town recognizes they need to meet the housing needs of not only their residents, but their seniors. There's a number of provisions in your plan of conservation and development that say this is a very fast-growing population, 55 plus, 62 plus that you have in town. We need to provide not only housing variety and opportunities, but affordable housing variety and opportunities for this segment of your community. We are adding 50 units, and 8 of those will be affordable. So we are filling 2 needs right there for both your senior residences and also your affordable senior residences. We think that in accordance with your criteria, we've done a well-planned, aesthetically pleasing development. We're increasing the supply of senior housing. We're offering variety of senior housing. We've got different floor plans. We've got different sizes. We've got some singles. We've got some duplexes. We're giving a lot of choice and housing option here. It fits into the neighborhood. This is a residential use. It's going to be, as you can see from the plans and the drawings, attractive. Design review was very happy with the quality of the design and the thought that went into this plan. We'll work with town staff to ensure there's no excessive lighting. We're going to maintain the associations will be required to maintain this nice landscaped screening between our neighbors to the north. The traffic report, speaks for itself based on industry studied numbers that this is not going to have an adverse impact on traffic in the surrounding areas. We think that this is an appropriate use for this site. Let's see. Again, I don't want to take you through each and every one of them. Can I trust that you have this in your record and that you have reviewed this document that deals with your special exception criteria for review?
Got it right here.
Okay, so we think that we've given you a plan that we've worked well with town staff on improving over the last few months. We've paid attention to your regulations, thank you. We think that we've dotted all of our i's and crossed our t's, and we think we've given you a compliant plan. We hope that you are comfortable with all of the information you've received. I understand there's a lot of it. Maybe you need some time to digest it and think about it. We have absolutely no objection to working with the town attorney on any improvements that he suggests with regard to the affordability plan, or when it comes time for preparation and recordation of the declaration. We will work closely with them, and it won't get recorded without their approval. Having said all of that, I hope you have all of, like I said, the information you need to close the hearing, perhaps even act on it tonight if you feel fit, and the team's still here to answer questions if there are any remaining.
Well, we won't act on it, but I guess would ask, is there any reason to hold the public hearing open? Okay. So what's going to happen here, we'll close the public hearing. Our regular meeting is supposed to end at 10, and we already have another public hearing, which is allowed to go past 10.
Okay.
But we're going to close this public hearing. We'll act on this at our next regular meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it?
Oh, you have something? Yeah, okay. Come on up. This is Chris Leonard.
So I'd like to speak to the trees. I think that is a fabrication. A lot of us have raised decks. Even my neighbors have a more commanding view, even without their raised decks, of that entire area. So I don't care how tall a 10-foot tree is going to get. We're going to be able to see over it. Okay, so unless it's a heavy growth tree, we're going to see that entire area. So no tree is going to protect us. The people on Foster Street who are going to see the new driveway, they're going to see all that area. It's not hiding a thing. So any tree growth, any tree plants, it's not going to hide it from us. It's not going to even hide it from the people from the road. It's speaking about the stuff that we keep waving our hands around, saying it's going to be in the other declaration. We're getting this cart before the horse, and we're waving our hands around like Jedi mind tricks here. Any planning that has hope involved in 55 or older mechanisms being put in there, it's not planning. If you're basing it all on hope, it's not planning. If we have one example of Strawberry Fields, I apologize. If we have one example of Strawberry Fields that has the, maybe one student that's in there, just because you didn't happen to, tug on the lion's tail all this time, doesn't mean it can't happen. There's total loopholes in here to potentially, become an any age area. So I don't think there's any protections up front here. And there's nothing to base, that it's going to maintain that. So, the other question I have is, why did we go straight to a high capacity or high density build? Why couldn't we just stick to the actual zoning that exists and build regular buildings? I'm going to go from out my front window, I maybe see 5 buildings that are out my front window. And after this is constructed, I'm going to see 12 buildings or greater because of the rise that I'm on. So I don't see why it was necessary to go to high density building straight away without even entertaining other building options. I personally, I'm not speaking for my other neighbors, but I was personally okay with the solar farm. I was fine with that. If it was even discussing regular building zoning, I was fine with that. But we're going straight into a lot of people with no protections. This is not public housing. This is not assisted living, right? Any of the ownership of trying to maintain the 55 plus is now going to fall to the town to create that bureaucracy to maintain that population that's 55 or older. So it is not being controlled by the state here. There's no buffer here. So I just, want to make sure that we get that straight.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
Just to respond, we didn't necessarily go straight to this high density, as it was put, housing here. And the density is well within what the regulations allow for our senior residence development. We did explore conventional subdivision and other types of development of this property. And when we met with staff early on, the message was very clear, just as it is in your plan of conservation and development. Don't give us a conventional subdivision. We do not and cannot handle any more burden on our schools. Your plan of conservation and development specifically says you need housing, but without the impact on the town's already taxed school system. So how are we going to achieve that, right? How do you do that unless you gear it towards seniors, 55 and older? So we had other concepts that we had been kicking around and planning on. And could we have gone in there with I can't even remember how many subdivision lots we were thinking at one point, 12 to 15 or so subdivision lots versus, or maybe it was even more, I'm sorry, I don't recall, but versus, a development like this, but that could have given you 2 per house school-aged children in your schools, and that was very clear that's not what you were looking for.
Okay. I think we've heard you
Okay.
several different ways here on this, okay.
Okay, so then I have nothing further to add.
Somebody like to make a motion to close the public?
Move that we close this public hearing.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. The public hearing is closed at 9:56. So now we have the next public hearing, which is a continuation of the CTEC proposal, the Draghi Farm Solar. And what I would ask is that we only deal with new information here. So well, I'm going to comment on that. Go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, please respect our speaker here and exit quietly.
Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. Again, my name is Jin Tao. I am with Burns & McDonnell. I am here representing CTEC on this Draghi Farm Solar project. It's good to be back in front of you guys, and thank you so much for your time and effort in this endeavor. Per Michelle's quick note to me, I think with the limited time that we have left, we would like to spend some of this to lock down kind of the site visit that's scheduled for this Friday, the 28th. Per Michelle's email, we had a few options and some time options. I think Mike Morrison from CTEC mentioned that the noon to 3 o'clock time frame is probably going to be the time that's best utilized to figure out how loud certain the inverters would get on these sites.
So could we just back up a second? I don't know whether everyone is even aware that we were talking about this. So
I did communicated by email that we would hope to set up a site visit
right.
for this Friday, the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
Noon to 3 was the range. I think we want to set it at a specific time and specific location.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so who would be available or wants to plan to come out on?
What time are we looking at?
We're open, so again, like if you are looking to get the best representation of the max volume of some of the inverters that are on site, you're looking to be at that noon to 3 time frame, if it's sunny. So that would be the best.
Okay, so everybody, maybe noon would be better. Well,
You want to say noon then? 12 p.m. on the 28th? And can you provide us the exact address?
I will provide that to you via email and then get that.
Okay, and so what we will be doing is posting a special meeting for this tour because we are inviting the public to it. So we'll post that tomorrow and we'll have the address where people are going to meet at noon on February 28th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Thank you.
And then that'll be available for the public. I did call the one, Jennifer, who was at our last meeting, and did advise her that this was going to happen at tonight's meeting. So she should be able to attend the site walk as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. So for new information to be presented tonight, we sent in an exhibit showing kind of the recalculated impervious cover for the site associated with, just as Michelle mentioned in, I think, 2 public hearings ago, with, instead of the panels themselves being considered impervious, it should just be the posts in which the racking is going to be installed. So based on initial racking manufacturer design, there should be about 440 posts that are going to be I-beams that are going to be driven into the ground. Assuming a conservative estimate of about 0.25 square feet per post, the solar installation itself will generate an additional 110 square feet of impervious cover to the site. That being said, including the concrete pads that were presented and the new gravel access road per request from the fire department, the overall increase to impervious from this site is still less than 5%, which is well within the means of the zoning regulations. Additionally, the client provided sound engineer. They provided an update to their study, focusing again on that Solectria inverter and that noise and the hertz of that specific inverter, and mentioned that yes, that noise that was recorded is solely because of that inverter, and the client has made the decision and has worked with the town to choose not to use that inverter moving forward for the project and choose one that will not generate that high-pitched noise for this project itself. I also have confirmation from him that the inverter locations for this site are going to be lower down, so south, further away from all of the abutters, and minimizing that kind of potential future noise for the site itself.
So you've handed us a voluminous new noise report, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to studying. Just for the record, we haven't read this at this point.
Right.
Appreciate, can you just, I mean, what you're telling us is that this has more frequencies, or we've changed the spectrum by choosing a different piece of equipment?
To summarize, by choosing a different piece of equipment, the new equipment is not going to be generating the noise at the specific hertz level, which is the higher pitched hertz level. The new equipment should be, I think in that report it mentions the Solectria has been known to generate tones in that like 8 hertz range, the very high pitch range. But the new equipment should be within that, I think, the 600 to like 800 range, which is a much lower tone. Additionally, with higher pitch noises, they travel further, but with lower tones, they do not travel as far.
Okay. So we would, I mean, there's different criteria for the general level of the noise and for the tones. So this is going to tell us that the tones are far enough away from the residents that they're not going to be affected by those tones.
Correct.
That's basically what this is going to say.
Correct.
Read it. Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to present tonight?
I'm happy to answer any of the open questions that were presented in the last hearing, or if you guys have any questions or other doubts about the project, I'm happy to discuss. In general, looking at the meeting minutes from last hearing, there were probably concerns about the effect of this project to property values. Additionally, with noise being a second big concern, and then the third being kind of fire safety, and a fourth being the decommissioning of the site. So with concern, I think Jennifer's concern on the decommission, Jennifer, was it? Or, sorry, one second. Yeah, with Jennifer's concern for the decommissioning of the site, my client has, will agree to fully removing all equipment on site and not just kind of the posts that were mentioned to be just removed 3 feet underground. I think that's a slight error in the language where that was focusing on getting rid of all of the electrical cables that were going to be run underground for kind of town regulations, but the posts themselves will be fully removed. Those are steel I-beams, and removing them will actually provide some cost savings considering steel is at a premium. Additionally, so from a site safety perspective, Jennifer did mention that the that one data set that was mentioned is that the U.S. Fire Administration found that instances of solar system fires more than doubled during the period between 2015 to 2018. While that may be, while that is something that is presented, the capacity of solar that was generated between 2015 to 2018 more than tripled. So realistically, if the fire risk actually decreased with the amount of solar that was developed in that same time frame. So fire risk on solar facilities and the solar panels themselves are very minimal. Again, it's more along the lines of the equipment, but the equipment again is located as far away from abutting properties as possible, and there's built-in fire safety features with how the solar facilities are operated. To address the kind of concerns with property values with the solar facility, in general, specifically in this case, the solar facility itself is not being maximized in size with the property that is available. We've designed this in a way so that we can still allow for the existing property owner to continue farming and have provided the buffers to allow for that farming and rural residential visual of that site. I could say that, and it was brought up on an earlier hearing, that the existing property owner has the capability of selling this site off to various other developers, but in doing so, those developers would probably not be able to maintain kind of that prime farmland that is existent, where being able to develop this solar facility without doing any grading, without doing any topsoil removal, is one of the only developments that will preserve the existing prime farmland soils and agriculture. And with the decommissioning of it as planned, that can return to agricultural use. So that's really the only thing I can say about that.
Okay, what about the concern about property values? There was a report that, and I forget her name now, one of the residents nearby submitted that indicated there's an effect on property value.
Again, there are reports that are, I did read that report, and I had that summary from that report say that. Again, it's hard to do apples to apples comparison between a solar development there versus any other type of development and the impacts of other types of development on that same property to adjacent property owners and property values.
Okay, I think the numbers were in the 1% to 2% effect that was
Yeah,
in that report,
yeah.
right? Okay. All right, so well, is this all you have to present now?
Yes, just wanted to
Thank you.
go in on the key points. Thank you.
Just a couple things. So again, we do have our site visit set up for this Friday. I did have the fire marshal go back and review the emergency response plan based on the concerns expressed at the last meeting. He did give me a memo stating that he felt that that it was adequate. He did say that at the time when these projects get developed, that they work directly with the fire department and create a very specific plan, and then that would happen at that time. So again, we would craft an approval condition along those lines to require that to occur. The second thing, I did speak with the town attorney about a decommissioning plan bond, and he indicated that you could require a bond as part of a decommissioning plan. He was going to get back to me with some specific language and a suggestion. So I told him that we'd probably be back here on March 11th, so I should have something for you at that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public? I would ask if you do come up and speak, you can tell the commission is very much aware of the comments that we've already heard, so I'd ask if you're going to speak that you confine your remarks to anything new that you haven't covered before, but that would be helpful. If there's anyone from the public would like to speak, yes, just new stuff. It's hard to do, right?
Yeah, Andrew Paterno, 301 Strawberry Lane. I visited 3 sites in the last couple of days in Enfield and East Windsor. And I chose these 3 sites, solar farms, because one is 20 acres, one is 12 acres, and one is 11.2 acres. So it's a little more comparable to the Draghi Farm site. I don't think it's fair to compare to East Windsor, where it's 485 acres of solar panels. They have many more than 1 or 2 inverters there, and that's what's increasing the noise. Now, when that went through, by the way, again, I'm going to say this, we're lucky that we're working directly with the developer. When that went through the Connecticut Siting Council, Jason Bauza, who's the first selectman, kind of a mayor, town administrator, CEO all rolled into one, they didn't have a seat at the Siting Council to give some input. He wrote 2 letters that outlined the concerns of the residents of East Windsor. Never even got an answer. They didn't have the decency to respond by saying, thanks for your interest, we'll be in touch. Nothing. So we're in a better position than that, and so I wanted to make the comparison with smaller solar arrays. In those 3 sites, and I have videotape of each of them if anybody's interested after the meeting before you go home, I could detect no noise. In one site, I was literally at the back row, and the inverter was where you are. There's a fence in between us, naturally. No noise. 11.1 acres. When you have 485 acres, you're going to have a big difference in the potential for noise because of the number of inverters. So why are we lucky? Well, we've already heard they're going to new equipment to make sure the sound level is down very low. They're moving the inverters to the center of the site as opposed to these 3 sites I visited. They were all on the perimeter of the site. So if there was a house across the street and it was generating noise, of course they'd hear it. So I'm here in support of the program. I think it's a smart move for us in town. I think the Open Space Task Force has already recommended to the town council to purchase the development rights for the property around the solar array so it can stay in farming forever. So I think it's a positive situation for us. Remember the Siting Council, those of you who've been around for a while, you can remember in 1999, the Connecticut Siting Council was given the task by the governor to find a site for a nuclear waste dump. They came up with 3 potential sites: East Windsor, Ellington, and South Windsor. And we didn't have a seat at the table. 3 of the fastest growing towns in central Connecticut, that's where they wanted to put a nuclear waste dump. So that's the problem with the Connecticut Siting Council. We're working directly with the developer, and they have every response from the staff, from you folks as commissioners, and thank you so much for your work and your willingness to do this. This developer has responded, yes, we'll make that change, we'll make that adjustment. So I hope you will approve this project. I think it's good for the town, it's good for the farmer, and I think it will help our solar profile in town, in the state.
Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Jennifer Krucher, 365
I'm sorry, I
Scanton.
couldn't remember your name earlier, but yes.
It's all right. I'm all over the place. I'll be quick. I have one new comment. I think it was starting to be addressed about the placement of the 4 inverters. I don't see them anywhere in any of the site plans. So that was always a question.
What is it you don't see?
The inverters, where the inverters are going. I looked at any of the site plans, I didn't see them. Maybe I don't know if I missed it, but I don't see them on the site plans.
I think they are actually.
Thank you. So the inverters actually are not shown in typical civil site plans. That level of equipment is shown in typical the electrical plans for the site. So she's not incorrect in saying that she doesn't see them on the site plans. We have an equipment pad for the transformers, but that's not where the inverters are going to be located. So if you want, as a part of the condition of approval, we can have the electrical site plans be provided, showing that the inverters are going to be installed as far away from the northern property lines as possible.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
There is an equipment area with transformers. I've been assuming that that's also where the inverters are. Are you going to be scattering them around the site?
So with the 4 inverters, they're going to be located on like the racks themselves, but they're going to be located south, as far south as possible, that So we're minimizing any potential for noise for any of the abutters.
I mean, I've seen at other sites where there's inverters at the end of a.
Correct. Yeah, that's kind of how it's gonna go, but we're not gonna install it on the north side at the end. We're gonna install it further to the south, closer to, further away from all the abutters and closer to the other equipment and the transformer batteries.
Oh, well, thank you for that, and thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I have more questions because there's a contradiction.
Keep going.
So that was my main question, where they're going. The first noise study that was dated January 6th states that the 4 inverters are going to be installed in the southwest corner of the site. And in the figure 2 in attachment B, it shows they're all going to be together next to the transformer in the equipment concrete pad area. That has 4 little squares. That's pretty evident. However, in my January 6th letter to Mr. Tao, asking for clarifications on things, I asked, referencing the application site plan, would the inverters be located on the concrete equipment pad attached to the post-supported racking or freestanding on posts next to the concrete equipment pad? The response was, the inverters are intended to be attached to the post-supporting racking and will be located, spaced as needed within the solar array rows. So if they're not going to be where the noise studied, I think that affects the accuracy of the noise study, which is all based on the 4 inverters being together in the concrete equipment pad. So that's my main question.
This calls for a response, I think.
Sure, thank you. So with the new inverter choice, and if we were to compare the inverters being studied in one location, where their resonance frequencies can combine, splitting them up, again, further away from the property would generate less overall volume over distance. So that should be a benefit in comparison to the noise study that Jennifer referenced.
So when we open up this noise study, are we going to see where the inverters are?
That's a great question. I have also not fully read this noise study because I got this recently, but I did read the front page and got an updated memo. But yes, I can look into that as well.
So can you, for our benefit, can you come up here and show me where on this chart the inverters are going to be? You can draw a circle where each one is or something. So this is Scannick Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, again, with I'm going to show this because the electrical design is still underway, but we can ensure that we locate the inverters. We can ensure that they're going to be located basically probably, if I were to guess, here, into 3 and 4. Or we can even shift them further south.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you say that all again?
Yeah, so again, the location is still being fully designed as part of the electrical design for the entire system, but we can ensure that they're going to be located on racks further south to this site. So I've kind of circled around where I could guess that they would be. Again, the number of panels that go to the inverters is kind of what's important. So the location of them will just have to balance the location of where the panels are.
Now, are the inverters the main source of noise, or do we also get noise from the transformers or any other equipment?
I'll go back. So we're focusing on the inverters in these meetings because of the concern of existing sites and that kind of high-pitched frequency. The other equipment, the noise study does account for and should not provide any impacts to the neighboring communities based on where they're going to be located.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any questions?
I'll just note that.
Sir, I'd like to speak.
Okay.
Again, my name is Aaron Majewski, and I live at 2022 John Fritz Boulevard. I've been neighbors with Gary for the last 8 or 9 years, and it's been a very simple relationship. When I first
Wait a minute, now we're talking about the solar farm?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please.
And it's been a very simple relationship with Gary. What he does on his property, he does on his property. What I do on my property, I do on my property. So I just want to state that I'm pro whatever he wants to do. If he wants to put up solar panels, then I'm all for it. Because the man he owns that property, he pays for that property, he decides what he does on his property. So I just want to state that. You guys have a good night.
Thank you.
I was going to note that
You do have one letter for the record.
one letter with 5 pictures included. I gave it to you and Commissioner Dexter. I'll also just note I think we need to seat an alternate because Commissioner Viteri is not here.
Oh.
I believe it is Commissioner.
We're in a public hearing. It's not necessary.
Okay.
Okay.
So keep that mental note for 5 minutes from now.
All right. There's a letter to be read, right? Okay. This has turned into such a nightmare here. Paper-wise. Not the project, but the paper. Okay. Go ahead.
We do have one letter from Will Smith, who is at some address. Can't see it here. Anyway, he has some current photos of the drainage problem at the Draghi Farm at 379 Scantic Road. These photos show that the current drainage plan is insufficient as the runoff from the orchard isn't backing up from the current undersized culvert. The runoff is coming from the area proposed by the engineers to add water to with the earthen berm. And I can pass these along to the commissioners? Yeah?
I think we're in our package, yeah.
Oh, you all got them?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I believe they only came in today. I only gave them to Commissioners Wagner and Dexter. I would be happy
Oh, that's
to
right, you
distribute.
handed it out before, okay, yeah.
I would be happy to distribute them for the next public hearing. I could send them in an email as well.
Yes. Definitely send him in an email, but I guess I don't understand exactly what he's saying here about this.
We'll make sure that Jen gets a picture of them, and maybe at the next meeting they can clarify.
But I mean, there's a problem now, but I thought there was a comment much earlier that they're actually supposedly improving that situation.
That was our plan, and we worked with the town engineer to kind of engineer that solution as part of this development, and we were going to propose additional work on the site to help mitigate the flooding issues or drainage issues along Scantic Road with that earthen berm. Otherwise, like at the first iteration of this plan, we weren't planning to do any of that because technically the solar farm with the meadow planting was not going to generate any additional runoff to the site, but if the site has existing problems, we were hoping to develop a solution to help mitigate those problems.
All right, thank you. All right, obviously we need to continue this.
Wait, I have a comment.
Okay.
I do want to retract a comment I made at the last meeting, February 11th. I had made a comment that the town of South Windsor reduces the assessment for homes that abut the power lines, but that is no longer the case. So I wanted to go on record, Josh, and make that comment.
Thank you. Okay, so we need someone to move to continue the hearing.
This would be till March 11th.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing to March 11th. Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. It is now 11:25, 10:25, I'm sorry. These analog clocks, I don't, I've been doing too many digital. All right, so either way, we're past our normal closing. I don't see any business on here that's urgent, do you? You want to do Carvana? Okay. All right, so let's have a motion to continue the regular meeting.
Move to continue the regular meeting till 10:30
Okay.
PM.
And I guess I should offer public participation on anything not on the agenda.
I think we need to let Commissioner Kupchunas back in
Okay.
because he recused
We didn't
himself.
vote on it. All in favor? Aye. If I seconded it if no one else did, okay.
He's not seated.
So let's do Carvana, application 2509P.
Make a motion to approve application 25-09P, Carvana temporary and conditional permit. This is for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for a temporary office trailer for additional employees on property located at 13 John Fitch Boulevard, GC Zone. This will expire, the temporary and conditional permit will expire on February 25th, 2027. Fire Marshal Building and Health Departments must be consulted, proper permits obtained for the modular office trailer. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I guess I forgot to seat an alternate, but we'll see. Oh, wait a minute. We're all here now? Yeah, okay. All right. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Did we vote on that? I forgot. We did, okay. Did you give me a motion to adjourn? I had a couple of comments on the minutes from last time. The previous minutes, we could probably approve January 28th.
So would you like me to, I can run down the changes we made to the January 28th minutes, because there were a few that you suggested and one that Michelle suggested. I have a list here if you'd like me to.
Okay, just read them out loud, yeah.
Okay, so on page 3, item 5 in the planner's report, there was a word missing. It should be, I think just more details can be found on the town website.
Okay.
On page 4, this was a change that Michelle requested from Andrew Paterna's testimony. I had written if the town purchases this property, and it should be if the town purchases the development rights to this property. On page 9, item 10 of the planner's report, I amended that to quote the paragraph from the CROG report that finds no issues with neighboring towns. And on page 10, this was just a typographical error. I had referred to CGS 830G in the public participation section, and that should have read 8-24. Those were our only changes.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye, okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all for sticking around.